Chapter 3. Outside Jade Pass City, the sun rose. A black-clothed youth with delicate features walked over to a fast-flowing river and stood still. Then, he turned around and said, "Now you can tell me, what do you want from me?" Behind him, there were two gray-robed men following him all the way. They were two servants, one fat and one skinny. Their auras were stable and their footsteps were steady. It was obvious that they had a certain level of cultivation. When they arrived at the river bank and saw that there was no one around, a fierce and ruthless look suddenly appeared in their eyes. "Trash, go repent in the Yellow Springs. A trash dares to covet Miss Feng Yao? Only death awaits you." Fatty snorted softly and surrounded the black-robed youth with Thin Man. The youth in black's expression changed. Want his life? The youth's name was Long Yu. He grew up in the Feng family and was the adopted son of the head of the Feng family, Feng Chang'e. However, in this world, he couldn't cultivate because of his blocked meridians. Even though he was the adopted son of the Feng family, he didn't receive any respect. As for Feng Yao, she was Feng Chang'e's daughter. She was only 16 this year and was not only beautiful but also had a slim figure. She was also a genius disciple of the Ice Sect. "Who ordered you to kill me?" Long Yu calmly asked. In reality, he didn't have the slightest bit of interest towards the so-called beauty, Feng Yao. "Since you've asked, I'll be merciful and tell you. Miss Feng Yao wants you dead so you can't escape. So die." The fatty snorted as he took a step forward and punched towards Long Yu. Long Yu couldn't cultivate, so he didn't even see the fat man's movements before he was hit in the shoulder. A huge force of 1,000 jin came crashing down on him, shattering his bones and crippling his entire hand. He fell on the river bank. Cough! Long Yu coughed out a mouthful of blood, but he didn't dare to make a sound. He was tough, but he couldn't accept this. In this world, strength represented everything. The fat servant was only at the first rank of the martial path, but he could gather 1,000 kilograms of strength with a wave of his hand. With a single punch, he was heavily injured and on the verge of death. "I can't die." Long Yu's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the fat and thin people walking towards him. He used all his strength to roll into the river. With a splash, he fell into the river. The river current was rapid, and his heavily injured body fell into it. He would most likely die, but at least there was a chance of survival. On the shore, the two servants were stunned. Should we follow them? Fatty was a little hesitant. Even though they were both servants, the thin man was at the second rank of the martial path, so his status in the Feng clan was much higher than the fat man's. The skinny man's eyes flickered. "No, the current is too fast. We won't be able to find him even if we go down. Why don't we wait for him downstream? He was severely injured by your punch, and even his meridians were broken. He rolled into the river and most likely died. If we go downstream, we will definitely be able to stop him. If he's alive, I want to see him. If he's dead, I want to see his corpse." "All right." Fatty nodded, and the two of them quickly followed the river downstream. In the turbulent river, Long Yu's entire body was in disarray. Many of his bones were broken, and his internal organs were ruptured. His entire body was in pain. Death was so close to him. "How can I just die like this?" Long Yu clenched his teeth, but the pain in his body had already made him numb. The rapid current washed over his body, and he crashed into boulders in the water. His blood dyed the turbulent river red. Not long after, his consciousness was close to blurring. Right at this moment, an enraged howl suddenly resounded in his mind, jolting him back to his senses. Long Yu suddenly woke up, and his heart was full of surprise. He saw a mysterious green light emitting from his chest, and it actually condensed into a long shadow of an azure dragon. It blocked the deadly current, and it protected him in the middle. Long Yu looked around, and he saw the sudden appearance of the azure dragon's shadow carrying his body forward in the turbulent current at an extremely fast speed, riding the wind and breaking the waves. The majestic azure dragon's power was immeasurable. Immediately after, a mysterious force entered his body, and it gradually healed his serious injuries. It even broke through his originally blocked meridians. He actually stepped into the martial path at this time. This is the Azure Dragon imprint. How could Long Yu not know what had happened? 10 years ago, he was still the king of assassins on Earth. After he died in an accident, he came to this other world and was reborn into the body of the young Long Yu. Since then, there was a mysterious Azure Dragon imprint on his chest, and he never knew what it was used for. At this time, because of the punch from the fatty, some of the meridians in Long Yu's body were broken, causing the Azure Dragon imprint to sense his dantian. In this way, it was a blessing in disguise. The Azure Dragon imprint actually turned into a Azure Dragon shadow, not only healing his injuries, but also allowing him to step into the martial path. The first rank of the martial path, connecting with the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, tempering the body, nurturing a trace of qi in the meridians, and possessing 1,000 pounds of strength. Long Yu's eyes flashed. He had been trying all kinds of methods, hoping to step into the martial path, but they all failed. He did not expect that the punch from the fatty would break some of his meridians, and thus activate the Azure Dragon imprint. Although I don't know what this Azure Dragon imprint is, since I have stepped into the martial path, no one can easily kill me. Long Yu developed a strong sense of confidence. In his previous life, the reason why he could become the king of assassins was because of his ruthlessness and determination, as well as his incomparably strong willpower. In order to achieve success in the martial path, a strong willpower was also essential. The Azure Dragon's shadow gradually dissipated. At this time, Long Yu had finally stepped into the martial path, and achieved the strength of the first rank of the martial path. Not only could he punch 1,000 pounds, but his reaction and perception had also greatly improved. In the rapid current, he could even hear the cries of the little insects by the river, and see the rippling water plants at the bottom of the rapids, easily following the direction of the current. This was the change that came with just stepping into the martial path. The martial path was divided into 9 ranks, and with every increase in rank, the martial path's strength would double. If one reached the 9th rank of the martial path, one punch would be able to crack a mountain, and one kick would be able to shatter the earth. Long Yu discovered that after the Azure Dragon's shadow dissipated, it returned to his chest and became an Azure Dragon mark again. And his consciousness could actually communicate with this Azure Dragon mark. Activate. With a thought, Long Yu felt the Azure Dragon mark start to heat up. In an instant, a wave of energy spread through his limbs, causing him to exclaim in surprise. 2,000 pounds of strength. At this time, Long Yu's punch could actually exert a force of 2,000 pounds, which was equivalent to a second rank of the martial path. Once the Azure Dragon mark was activated, it could actually increase his strength by 1,000 pounds. But very quickly, he felt a trace of fatigue. It seemed that the heat from the Azure Dragon mark could not last long. Of course, he was already very satisfied with this. This could be used as a trump card in the future. In my previous life, I was also considered a descendant of the dragon. I wonder if this Azure Dragon mark has anything to do with it. Let's not care about him for now, it's time to go ashore. Long Yu familiarized himself with his strength, and felt that the current had started to slow down. He should have reached the downstream. Whoosh! With a move of his body, he jumped ashore and landed heavily on the grass. His entire body was filled with a feeling of strength. On the shore, 2 figures, one fat and one skinny, looked at him in shock. This brat did not die? They had waited downstream for about 2 hours, and originally thought that they would see Long Yu's corpse. Who would have thought that the brat would still be alive and kicking? This trash can actually jump ashore? The fat man felt that it was inconceivable. That punch of his had the strength of 1,000 pounds, how could this brat withstand it? Fatty, it seems that your punch missed. How useless. Why aren't you going to finish him off? The skinny man stared at Long Yu's drenched figure, and his eyes flashed as he egged on the fat man. "Humph, it seems that I was too careless. This time, he will definitely not live." The fat man took a step forward, and his fat face revealed a fierce expression. He looked at Long Yu as if he was looking at a dead man. Chapter 4. Long Yu stood up and glanced at the fat man. He didn't expect the fat and skinny guys to be waiting for him on the shore. However, now that he had stepped into the path of martial arts and could even display the strength of the second rank of the martial path, why would he be afraid of these two? "It's time for me to take revenge for that punch." When Long Yu saw the fatty walking over, his heart was calm without any ripples. Although he had no combat experience in this world, as the king of assassins in his previous life, his killing techniques had been perfected. It was no problem for him to deal with this fat man who didn't even know martial arts. "Brat, you were lucky just now, but it won't be so easy now." Fatty arrived not too far away from Long Yu. His face was filled with ridicule as he arrogantly scolded, "However, if you are willing to call me grandfather, I might let you die a little more pleasantly." He thought he had won and wanted to humiliate Long Yu, but unfortunately, Long Yu didn't listen to him at all. Boom, taking advantage of the fact that the other party was still deep in thought, Long Yu abruptly dashed forward and swept his leg across the other party's fat ankle, causing the fatty to lose his balance and fall backwards in shock. Before Fatty could react, Long Yu's right fist, which contained 1,000 pounds of force, smashed heavily into the side of Fatty's head. With a bang, the fat man's body fell heavily to the ground, his eyes filled with disbelief. He didn't even make a sound until he died. He didn't think he would die here, at the hands of a trash who couldn't cultivate in the past. Killed in one hit. The skinny man frowned. Why couldn't this fat man take care of a trash? Long Yu stood still and looked up at the skinny man. There was still one left. Since the other wanted to kill him, he naturally wouldn't show any mercy. At this time, the skinny man seemed to notice something and chuckled. "I didn't think that a trash like you would one day step into the path of martial arts. How rare. But if you think you can escape from me after dealing with a fat man, you're too naive." "Escape?" The corners of Long Yu's mouth curled up slightly. "Why would I run away?" "What?" The skinny man suspected that he had heard wrongly, but he quickly reacted and laughed. "That's right. You can't escape even if you want to. You might as well die obediently and suffer less." He had never thought of any other possibilities. His cultivation was at the second rank of the martial path, so he could exert twice the strength of the first rank, reaching a force of 2,000 kilograms. As for Long Yu, he had always been called trash. Even though he had just stepped onto the path of martial arts, he only had the strength of 1,000 pounds, which was incomparable to him. The skinny man took a step forward and a savage look appeared on his face. "All right, I was careless earlier, causing Fatty to lose his life for nothing. But now you have no chance. Die." As soon as he finished speaking, the skinny man's figure quickly dashed towards Long Yu, stirring up a gust of wind. Facing the skinny man, Long Yu's expression was slightly solemn. "Azure Dragon Mark, activate!" As he communicated with it, the Azure Dragon Mark on his chest began to heat up. Then, a strong force surged through his body, temporarily giving him the strength of 2,000 pounds. In his previous life, he was an expert in killing. Now it was the same. The skinny man dashed over and raised his fist. Long Yu's figure flashed and he dodged the punch. After stepping onto the path of martial arts, his speed was much faster. However, the other party's punch still brushed past his cheek, almost causing his head to explode. The strength of the second rank of the martial path was too strong. Long Yu did not dare to take it head-on. In the next moment, he suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the skinny man's wrist. The skinny man frowned and then let out a scream. "Ah!" His wrist was broken. You, the second rank of the martial path? The skinny man was inexplicably terrified. He never thought that the trash in front of him would not only step onto the path of martial arts, but also step onto the second rank of the martial path. How was that possible? However, the strength that Long Yu used to break his wrist was definitely a force of 2,000 pounds. Long Yu snorted and did not waste time talking to him. He then lifted his leg and kicked the skinny man 3 inches below his navel. This place was the foundation of martial arts, where the elixir field was located. This kick made the skinny man scream even more miserably. He was crippled and his cultivation was destroyed. From now on, he was useless. Both of them had the strength of 2,000 pounds, but in terms of the use of strength, Long Yu was clearly superior. Crack! Long Yu broke the skinny man's neck. He had just stepped onto the path of martial arts, but he had already killed 2 servants who wanted to kill him. One of them was even at the second rank of the martial path. No one would believe this if they told others. Watching the skinny man fall to the ground, Long Yu's heart was calm. Since the other party wanted to kill him, he had to be prepared to be killed. He was not a kind person. After crossing over to the heavenly mandate continent, I have been cautious and did not offend anyone. But now there is still someone who wants to kill me. Long Yu closed his eyes and rested for a moment. He then opened his eyes and stood up. It seemed that in the world of martial arts, it was impossible to not provoke anyone. The only way to deal with it was to become stronger. In the heavenly mandate continent, martial arts experts all practice martial arts. Fortunately, this skinny man does not know martial arts. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy to kill him. He casually threw the bodies of the 2 servants into the river and walked in the direction of Jade Gate City. He wanted to carefully investigate whether it was Feng Yao who wanted to kill him. It was noon in Jade Gate City. Long Yu returned to the city alone and walked towards the Feng family's mansion. As a large city in the Tang Empire, there were many martial arts cultivators in Jade Gate City. The major families in the city, in particular, provided batch after batch of fresh blood for the major sects in the Tang Empire. This was a prosperous city with a population of millions. The Feng family was only one of the 4 major families in the city. The other 3 families were not weaker than the Feng family. Long Yu walked to the entrance of the Feng family's mansion in the west of the city. Suddenly, a servant rushed out to greet him. "Young Master Long, you have finally returned. The family leader is looking for you everywhere. Please go to the hall quickly." Long Yu glanced at the interior of the Feng clan's mansion and saw that many servants were searching everywhere for him. It seemed like they were looking for him. Seeing that Long Yu had returned, these servants all heaved a sigh of relief. They definitely would not have thought that I was taken out by someone to kill them, right? Unfortunately, it was a blessing in disguise. I stepped into the martial arts path and came back alive. Chapter 5. Patriarch Feng Chang'e and his family sat in the main hall of the Feng residence. Feng Chang'e used to be a soldier on the battlefield. He was tall, strong, and extremely bold. Every single move he made carried murderous intent. However, at this moment, this former soldier had a slightly worried expression on his face. His adopted son, Long Yu, had gone missing early in the morning. One must know that Long Yu was the son of an old friend of his. He treated Long Yu better than he treated his own daughter. Now that Long Yu had gone missing, it was easy to imagine how he was feeling. Apart from Patriarch Feng Chang'e, there was also a beautiful girl in a light green dress. She was Feng Chang'e's daughter, the genius martial cultivator, Feng Yao. Feng Yao had joined the Ice sect, one of the 7 major sects of Tang Empire. She was talented in cultivation and was now an inner disciple of the Ice sect. Her cultivation had reached the 7th stage of the martial path. At this moment, there was no expression on this beautiful young lady's face. She wore an indifferent expression. She didn't seem to care about Long Yu's disappearance at all. Apart from Feng Chang'e and Feng Yao, There was also a luxuriously dressed middle-aged woman in the main hall. She was Feng Yao's mother and Feng Changa's wife, Lu Yu. "Feng Changa, what are you waiting for?" The middle-aged noblewoman, Lu Yu, said to Feng Changa with a cold look on her face. "Yao is in a hurry to return to the ice sect to cultivate. I don't have time to waste with you." It was easy to see that Lu Yu and Feng Changa were husband and wife, but they didn't have a good relationship. Feng Changa glared at Lu Yu and asked angrily, "How dare you say that? I just asked you last night if you should marry Yao. Why did he go missing early in the morning? Explain yourself." Lu Yu said disdainfully, "What's there to explain? He's just a piece of trash. How can he be worthy of our Yao? Anyone can kill a piece of trash like him once he leaves the Feng residence. Even if he really dies, he deserves it." Feng Changa roared, "Shut up!" The hall fell silent for a moment after the angry shout. The anger in Feng Changa's heart was quickly replaced by worry and anxiety. Just as Lu Yu said, Long Yu was an ordinary person who couldn't cultivate. If he left the Feng residence, it would be extremely easy for him to encounter mishaps. After a while, the indifferent Feng Yao suddenly stood up and turned towards the door. Her voice, as clear as a sparrow's, rang out, "I still have matters to attend to in the sect. I'll be leaving first." Feng Changa curbed his temper as he faced his daughter. He frowned and asked, "You've only been back for 2 days. Why are you in such a hurry to leave?" Feng Yao didn't even turn her head. She said lightly, "I came back to pick a suitable combat weapon. Now that I have Father's sword, there's no need for me to stay here any longer. I'd better return to the sect to cultivate." After saying that, she walked towards the entrance of the hall with light step. However, when she looked up, she saw a young man dressed in black walking towards her. The young man had a smile on his face. It was Long Yu, who had just returned from outside the city. Feng Yao could not help but frown. "Little Yao, why are you leaving so soon?" Long Yu walked over, the corners of his mouth curling up. Feng Yao, the genius girl who had recently risen to fame, could be considered as his sworn sister. He had heard some of the conversation between the 3 people in the hall and shook his head when he learned that his godfather, Feng Changa, wanted to betroth Feng Yao to him. Although his godfather was good to him, it was too good to be true. Feng Changa, who was originally sitting in the hall, immediately stood up when he saw Long Yu's black-clad figure. His face was filled with joy. "Thank goodness this kid is fine." As for the middle-aged noblewoman, Lu Yu, she looked displeased and did not want to talk to Long Yu, who had just returned. Feng Yao's brows furrowed slightly as she nodded. It was as if she was puzzled to see Long Yu again. She slowly strode forward, her graceful figure drifting towards the exit, as though she didn't see Long Yu. Very quickly, she brushed past Long Yu. Long Yu didn't say much and just walked towards the hall. Just as he was about to brush past Feng Yao, he suddenly said something. His words made Feng Yao stop in her tracks. "Godfather, 2 servants brought me to the river outside the city this morning and tried to silence me. However, an unexpected person appeared at the most crucial moment and saved me." Long Yu said this to Feng Changa. Of course, he had purposely said it to Feng Yao to see her reaction. They wanted to silence him. Feng Changa's good mood instantly vanished and his face darkened. The servants of the Feng clan had brought Long Yu out to silence him? How audacious! In the hall, the middle-aged lady, Lu Yu, was also shocked. She did not expect something like this to happen. As for Feng Yao, who had brushed past Long Yu, she stopped in her tracks and asked subconsciously, "Who was the person who saved you?" Although her tone was calm, Long Yu had lived 2 lives and had dealt with life and death countless times. He was very familiar with people's hearts. There was a slight tremble in the depths of her calm voice. It was obvious that Feng Yao was not feeling calm at the moment. It was undoubtedly her. Long Yu was absolutely sure that the 2 servants had been ordered by Feng Yao to kill him. "Little Yao, aren't you in a hurry to return to the ice sect? You don't have to bother yourself with such irrelevant matters." Long Yu chuckled and walked past her into the hall. Although he wanted to take revenge, he was no match for Feng Yao with his current strength. Most importantly, Feng Yao was Feng Changa's daughter. Feng Yao also realized that her reaction was a little over the top. She snorted lightly and left without looking back. Feng Changa, who was in the main hall, had naturally seen her reaction, causing him to frown deeply. Could it be that Feng Yao had instructed her two servants to kill Long Yu? Based on Feng Changa's understanding of his daughter, it was indeed possible that she would do such a thing. Ever since that incident when she was young, Feng Yao's desire for strength had reached a level that ordinary people could only look up to. In her eyes there was only strength. She was determined to get rid of anything that stood in her way of improving her strength. Feng Changa suddenly realized that he had harmed Long Yu by wanting to marry Feng Yao. As an ordinary person who could not cultivate, even if Feng Yao did not mind, Long Yu would not end up well with Feng Yao in the future. Humph! The middle-aged lady, Lu Yu, snorted coldly. She had never been nice to Long Yu. She was about to say something when Feng Changa scolded her. Lu Yu, leave us for now. Lu Yu knew that her husband was furious when she saw Feng Changa's stern expression. You good-for-nothing brat, you're lucky that someone saved you in this situation. Listen to me, you good-for-nothing toad. Don't keep thinking about eating swan meat. Which part of you is worthy of my yaoer? Lu Yu said disdainfully and left the hall. Thinking about eating swan meat all day? Long Yu was stunned. This shrew was really full of herself. Of course, she was Feng Changa's wife, so Long Yu could not be bothered to argue with her. Soon, only Long Yu and Feng Changa were left in the Feng family's hall. Feng Changa sat down at the head of the table and called out to Long Yu, "Little Yu, don't take what I said seriously. Come, sit down and tell me what happened." "Godfather." Long Yu went over and sat beside him. After pondering for a moment, he quickly decided what to say. His godfather, Feng Changa, was an old friend of his father's. He had raised him since he was young and was indebted to him. Without Feng Changa, Long Yu, a good-for-nothing who could not cultivate, would not have been able to live peacefully until now. But now, Feng Changa's biological daughter had instructed her servants to kill Long Yu. This was revenge, and revenge must be taken. That was the belief that Long Yu had always adhered to. However, Feng Yao was Feng Changa's biological daughter. Gratitude and hatred were intertwined. If it were anyone else, they would not know how to handle this matter. Kindness comes first, revenge comes later. I'll repay the kindness first, then revenge. Long Yu quickly made up his mind. He could clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred. If he really wanted to take revenge and kill Feng Yao, he would have to repay Feng Changa's kindness first. Otherwise, he would feel guilty. Now that he had entered the martial path, it was taboo to feel guilty. Of course, whether it was to repay kindness or to take revenge, he needed to have a stronger cultivation. Otherwise, both would just be empty talk. After thinking it through, Long Yu began to explain. This morning, 2 family servants came to find me, saying that the patriarch had ordered me to go out and buy some sundries. I did not suspect anything, so I followed them out of the city. When we reached the river outside the city, they suddenly attacked and wanted to kill me. Foster father, actually, the unexpected person I mentioned just now simply did not exist. It was a blessing in disguise that I was able to come back alive. I happened to enter the martial path at that time. Entered the martial path. The last 5 words were like a bolt of lightning. Feng Changa's face was immediately filled with excitement. Little Yu, you can cultivate now? Chapter 6. The news that Long Yu was able to cultivate was definitely good news for Feng Changa. All along, Long Yu's inability to cultivate had always been a knot in Feng Changa's heart. After all, in this world where martial arts reigned supreme, a person who couldn't cultivate was actually a piece of trash. I can cultivate now. I've stepped into the first layer of the martial path. Long Yu nodded and said with a smile. Not bad, not bad. I didn't think that you would benefit from a disaster. How fortunate. Feng Changa's determined face was filled with joy. He reached out and grabbed Long Yu's wrist to check. As expected, he found faint mystical chi flowing through Long Yu's meridians. He was at the first layer of the martial path, and his meridians were no longer blocked. Feng Changa was also glad that Long Yu was fine. Otherwise, he would have regretted it for the rest of his life if Long Yu had been killed by the two servants. Foster father, in order to save my life, I killed those two servants. Long Yu felt a little awkward. After all, the two servants were servants of the Feng clan and had done many things for the Feng clan. It's fine. They wanted to kill someone, but they weren't strong enough. They were courting death. Feng Changa waved his hand with a smile. You've just stepped into the martial path, yet you were able to defeat two servants. It shows that you're talented in combat. Work hard in the future. Your future is in your hands. His future was in his hands. Long Yu solemnly nodded his head. He naturally understood this logic. On the martial path, even a true genius might not be able to reach the end. This path was too dangerous. The only way to reach the peak was to stay true to one's heart and persevere. Alright, don't overthink it. Feng Changa smiled gently when he saw the solemn expression on Long Yu's face. He patted his shoulder and said, I had prepared a spirit jade pill for Yao but she left in such a hurry that I didn't have the time to give it to her. Since you've stepped into the martial path, I'll give it to you now. With that, he took out an exquisite porcelain bottle from his clothes and handed it over to Long Yu. Jade spirit pill. Long Yu was stunned. It was actually a medicinal pill. On the Heavenly Mandate continent, elixirs were a great aid to warriors' cultivation. If they grew up in some big clans and consumed all kinds of elixirs and spiritual herbs from a young age, they would have a much greater advantage in cultivation than ordinary people. The Jade Spirit Pill is a low-grade pill. Although it is the lowest grade pill, it should have a good effect on you. Feng Changa smiled and said, Go, absorb him now. You can't waste time on the path of cultivation. Yes. Long Yu didn't refuse. After all, he really did need pills now. Just as Feng Changa had mentioned, even though the spiritual jade pill was the lowest grade pill, it was not easy for Feng Changa to get his hands on one. The value of a spirit jade pill was enough to support a family of 3 for at least 10 years. He took the small porcelain bottle containing the spirit jade pill, bid farewell to Feng Changa, and headed towards the small courtyard where he lived. Feng Changa stood at the entrance of the hall and watched as Long Yu's silhouette gradually disappeared. He nodded in satisfaction. General, now that your son has finally stepped into the martial path, even I didn't expect this day to come. As he thought about it, tears appeared in Feng Changa's eyes. The days when he rode thousands of miles with the general and killed enemies on horseback were gone forever. Now, if Long Yu could achieve something in the martial path, Feng Changa would be satisfied for the rest of his life. Long Yu walked towards the small courtyard where he lived. Halfway there, he suddenly felt someone jump out from the side. Useless kid, do you still remember what day it is today? An arrogant young man dressed in brocade clothes and 2 servants of the Feng family blocked in front of Long Yu. Not only the arrogant young man, but even the 2 servants looked at Long Yu with contempt. Feng Luo. Long Yu smiled faintly. So it's young Master Feng Luo. Why don't I remember what day it is today? In the past, when Long Yu could not cultivate, this Feng Luo used his identity as the young master of the Feng family to bring people to beat him up and rob the monthly allowance given by the mansion. Stop playing dumb. Feng Luo's expression was arrogant as he snorted. Hand over your monthly allowance. You're a piece of trash who can't cultivate. Why do you need so much money? What a waste. You might as well give it to me so I can improve my strength. In front of this piece of trash, Long Yu, he was so arrogant that his nostrils were about to rise to the sky. Who asked him to be a martial cultivator in the 3rd realm of the martial path? Although the 3rd realm of the martial path was nothing to others, It was extremely powerful to a piece of trash like Long Yu. He could do whatever he wanted. Have you ever used any of the money you took from me for cultivation? When have you not used it for pleasure? Long Yu laughed condescendingly. I think it's a waste to give this money to you. Piece of trash, did you take the wrong medicine today? Do you want to get beaten up again? Feng Luo did not expect Long Yu to be so uncooperative today. He had been submissive before, hadn't he? Of course, he did not know that now that Long Yu had entered the martial path, the difference in strength between them was not that big. Long Yu had always been bullied by him. Now that he had the strength, he naturally would not endure it in silence. Just nice, let's see if I can fight against someone in the third realm of the martial path, Long Yu thought to himself. Although he was no match for Feng Luo in terms of strength, he had the rich experience of killing people from his past life. Coupled with the 1,000 pounds of strength he had gained after stepping onto the path of martial arts, he might not necessarily lose to Feng Luo. However, at that moment, a loud shout came from the side. Stop! Feng Luo, what are you doing? Feng Changa's figure appeared not far away. He had actually heard the shout. Feng Changa? Feng Luo's expression changed. He gritted his teeth. Let's go, piece of trash. Trash, consider yourself lucky today. After saying that, he turned around and left with his two servants. Am I the lucky one? Long Yu looked at Feng Luo's departing figure and smiled faintly. It was still uncertain who was the lucky one. After Feng Changa shouted at Long Yu to retreat, he did not come over. He only smiled at Long Yu from afar, then turned around and left. Long Yu looked at Feng Changa's back, before turning around and leaving as well. Feng Luo, I still have a big brother called Feng Yun. He has been cultivating in the Zhentian clan, one of the 7 major sects of the Tang Kingdom, for a long time. Now, he is already a core disciple. As Long Yu walked towards his small courtyard, he thought to himself, as a core disciple of the Zhentian clan, Feng Yun's cultivation is probably not much weaker than my adoptive father's. Most importantly, he is still young. The Feng family will probably be controlled by Feng Yun in the future. The reason why Feng Luo was so arrogant, openly provoking and insulting Long Yu, and even looking down on Feng Changa, was because of his big brother, Feng Yun, who was cultivating in the Zhentian clan. Feng Yao would always lose to Feng Yun during the Feng family meeting every year. This showed how strong Feng Yun was. If my cultivation can increase faster, I might be able to help my adoptive father. Long Yu made up his mind. Feng Changa had done so much for him. How could he let someone else take his position as the head of the family? Chapter 7. Inside the room, Long Yu sat cross-legged, closing his eyes and adjusting his breath. He had just taken the spirit jade pill and was ready to slowly absorb the heaven and earth spiritual qi contained in it and use it to temper his body, thereby improving his cultivation. Elixirs were made by an alchemist using a variety of spirit herbs and herbs to maximize the effects of the spirit herbs and herbs. For example, the spirit jade pill, although it was the lowest level of lower-grade elixir, an ordinary martial cultivator could easily achieve half a year of hard work after taking it. It could be seen that if one had enough money to buy all kinds of elixirs and spirit herbs, the martial cultivator's cultivation would be much faster than others. However, after a martial cultivator had taken a certain elixir, they would develop an antibody to the same elixir. If they took the same elixir again, the effect would be greatly reduced. Every martial cultivator's talent is different, and their ability to absorb elixirs is also different. I wonder how my ability is. Long Yu thought to himself and began to move the qi in his meridians, trying to refine the spirit jade pill he had just taken. A burst of extremely rich heaven and earth spiritual qi emitted from the spirit jade pill and was quickly absorbed by his meridians. He could feel that the heaven and earth spiritual qi was converted into qi in his body and could be used by him. There was originally only a trace of qi in his body, but soon that trace of qi began to gradually grow, and his strength, gradually from 1,000 pounds, began to slowly increase. 1,100 pounds, 1,200 jin. After a while, the spirit jade pill in his body completely melted and turned into rich heaven and earth spiritual qi, but he could not absorb all of it. I can only absorb 30% of the elixir's spiritual qi. Long Yu was soon disappointed. 30% of the elixir's spiritual qi was at most similar to Feng Yao's. In fact, being able to absorb 30% of the elixir's spiritual qi was considered a good talent in the entire Heavenly Mandate continent. Even in the 7 major sects of the Tang Empire, it would be ranked at the top. After all, most martial cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate continent could only absorb 10 or 20% of the elixir's spiritual qi. However, Long Yu was the king of assassins in his previous life, and he was extremely strict with himself. Now that he had entered the martial path, of course, he had to strive for the peak. A mere 30% of the elixir's spiritual qi is far from enough. Long Yu clenched his fist. At this moment, he suddenly felt the azure dragon mark on his chest heat up again. Long Yu frowned slightly. Could this azure dragon mark have some other mysteries? Just as he was thinking about this, a mysterious power instantly spread out from the azure dragon mark, just like the power that helped him open up all the meridians in his body. This mysterious power actually wrapped up the spiritual qi from the jade spirit pill that Long Yu didn't absorb. Immediately, Long Yu was shocked to discover that the spiritual qi that was going to be wasted was once again absorbed by him. Heaven-defying! Long Yu's heart thumped as he sensed everything in his body in disbelief. Under the effect of the azure dragon mark, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within the jade spirit pill was completely absorbed by him, and his cultivation instantly broke through to the second stage of the martial Tao. At the second rank of the martial path, one could easily exert 1,000 jin of strength. The strength they could exert was double that of a first rank. After breaking through to the second rank of the martial Tao, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth within the jade spirit pill was not completely consumed. Instead, it was stored in his dantian. The remaining medicinal power could not be absorbed immediately. After all, Long Yu had just broken through and his cultivation was not stable enough. After he familiarized himself with the power of the second rank of the martial Tao, the effects of absorbing the medicinal power would be better. At the same time, he also discovered that when he stepped into the second rank of the martial Tao, the azure dragon mark on his chest seemed to have changed a little. However, he didn't know what the change was. This azure dragon mark, what kind of existence is it? Long Yu murmured. After obtaining the azure dragon mark, he could actually completely absorb the medicinal power of the pill. If this were to spread, it would be simply shocking. In other words, with the same cultivation resources, his cultivation speed would be more than 3 times that of geniuses like Feng Yao. It seemed that relying on the azure dragon mark, he could definitely quickly catch up to the gap between him and the other youths of the same generation. In the near future, he might even surpass everyone. The azure dragon mark would become his greatest secret. Even Feng Chang'e, Long Yu did not intend to tell him. This was because it was simply too shocking. If he were to tell him, it would not benefit him. In the next few days, Long Yu consolidated his cultivation in his room. In the entire Feng residence, other than Feng Chang'e, no one knew that Long Yu could already cultivate. On the same day, Feng Chang'e went to investigate which 2 servants wanted to harm Long Yu. In the end, when he found the 2 servants' corpses, he was greatly shocked. One of the 2 servants was actually at the second rank of the martial Tao. In other words, Long Yu had just stepped into the martial Tao, but he was already able to kill an existence at the second rank of the martial Tao. This was simply inconceivable. Feng Chang'e did not reveal this matter. He knew that it would not be good for Long Yu if too many people knew about this, especially the terrifying powers in the imperial city. If they knew that Long Yu could cultivate, it would definitely be a great threat 3 days later. Long Yu consolidated his cultivation at the second rank of the martial Dao. He could control the strength of 2,000 pounds with ease. Only then did he leave the small courtyard where he lived in satisfaction. Next, he would go to the martial arts pavilion of the Feng clan to choose 1 or 2 martial arts techniques to cultivate. Although he was very skilled in killing, this was not enough to ensure his safety on the Heavenly Mandate continent. The martial arts techniques of the Heavenly Mandate continent were numerous and complicated. In particular, it included the use of Xian Qi within the body. This was a field that the current Long Yu did not understand at all. Feng Clan Martial Arts Pavilion. When Long Yu's figure appeared at the entrance of the Martial Arts Pavilion, many disciples of the Feng Clan cast doubtful glances at him. What was this trash who could not cultivate doing at the Martial Arts Pavilion? As one of the 4 great clans of Jade Gate City, the Feng Clan naturally had many branches and leaves. There were at least hundreds of direct descendants and collateral descendants added together. In the martial arts pavilion of the Feng clan, there were disciples of the Feng clan who would choose martial arts techniques and cultivate them all year round. When Long Yu stepped into the entrance of the martial arts pavilion, an arrogant voice suddenly came from the front. "Yo ha! Everyone, look who's here! Isn't this our big trash who can't cultivate?" When these words came out, the surrounding people immediately burst into laughter. Long Yu raised his head and looked. As expected, he saw young Master Feng Luo, who had tried to rob him 3 days ago, standing in front of him and looking down at him. "Feng Luo, what do you want?" Long Yu said calmly. "Trash, you dare to come to the martial arts pavilion. Are you here to cultivate martial arts techniques?" Feng Luo arrogantly looked down on Long Yu. As everyone knows, martial arts techniques require the use of Xian Qi. A trash like you can't cultivate, where would you get your Xian Qi from? Why aren't you getting lost? What if I insist on going in? Long Yu's voice turned cold. This Feng Luo had repeatedly found trouble with him. He had tolerated it time and time again. Now, he was even stopping him from entering the martial arts pavilion. If he continued to tolerate it, then his identity as the king of assassins in his previous life would be a waste. "You really want to go in?" Feng Luo looked at Long Yu with disdain. "If you're sincere and really want to go in and admire the wonders of my Feng clan's martial arts techniques, it's not impossible. Of course, in order to show your sincerity, you'll have to kowtow to me 3 times, slap yourself 10 times, and crawl past my feet. How about it? Isn't this young master magnanimous? Kowtow to me 3 times, slap himself 10 times, and crawl past my feet?" Many disciples of the Feng clan looked over with interest. Although Feng Luo was only at the 3rd realm of the martial path, and wasn't considered a strong person, Long Yu was even more of a trash, who couldn't even enter the martial path. Such a trash actually dared to come to the Feng clan's martial arts pavilion. He deserved to be humiliated. Chapter 8. Feng Luo stood arrogantly in front of Long Yu at the entrance of the Feng family's martial arts pavilion. "Kowtow 3 times, slap yourself, and crawl under your feet?" Long Yu asked quietly. In the Feng clan, even if it was just a servant with a different surname, it would not be a problem for them to enter the martial skill pavilion. But now, he, Long Yu, as the adopted son of the clan master, actually had to kowtow to someone in order to enter the martial skill pavilion. It was simply ridiculous. Behind all this was Feng Changa's influence in the Feng family was no longer what it used to be. Even the position of the family head was about to be replaced. That's right. This is because I'm generous. If not, trash like you should get out of the Feng family. Feng Luo squinted at him, his eyes filled with disdain. "Is that so?" Long Yu laughed coldly. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he looked to the side. There were naturally people guarding the entrance of the Feng family's martial arts pavilion. Today's guard was an elder from the Feng family's side branch called Feng Tianxiang. At that moment, Long Yu looked at Feng Tianxiang. He saw that the side branch elder was slightly old. His hair and beard were all white, but his cultivation was not to be underestimated. It was not something a junior like Long Yu could compare to. As if noticing that Long Yu was looking at him, Feng Tianxiang opened his eyes slightly, waved his hand and said lazily, "Just do as young Master Long Yu says. If you don't kowtow 3 times, slap yourself 10 times, and crawl under young Master Long Yu's feet, you can forget about entering the martial arts pavilion." As soon as he said that, many of the surrounding Feng family disciples looked at him mockingly. This Long Yu is really trash. He doesn't know that Elder Tianxiang is also a member of the Feng family. He actually asked him for help. What a joke. This kind of trash should really get out of the Feng family. He's just wasting the Feng family's food by staying alive. I heard that this trash was expelled by a big family in the Imperial City. That's why he's shamelessly living in the Feng family. Shameless to the extreme. Long Yu listened to the mockery of the surrounding Feng family disciples. He still smiled faintly, but his smile was cold. It seemed like the Feng clan would not tolerate him. In the entire Feng clan, Feng Chang'e was the only one who had done Long Yu a favor. Long Yu usually stayed in seclusion, so he didn't feel anything. However, now that he wanted to enter the martial skill pavilion, he encountered many obstacles. If the Feng clan doesn't accept me, they will naturally accept me. Long Yu had a tough personality, so he naturally wouldn't take such a blow. Now that he had embarked on the path of martial arts, he would only be a burden to Feng Chang'e if he continued to stay in the Feng clan. It was better to go out and train. Once his cultivation level had increased, he would return to help Feng Chang'e. However, before he left, he could not let Feng Luo go. Feng Luo. Long Yu took a step forward. His eyes were cold as he looked at Feng Luo. You keep saying that I'm a piece of trash, but if one day I, a piece of trash, step on you, then what are you? Rumble. These words were like a clap of thunder. Everyone present was stunned. How could this trash dare to say such words? A piece of trash that couldn't cultivate actually dared to say that he could step on Feng Luo, a martial practitioner in the 3rd realm of the martial path. At the 3rd realm of the martial path, a casual punch had the strength of 4,000 kilograms. One punch would probably be able to smash Long Yu into minced meat. In the martial skill pavilion, everyone stared at Long Yu. They felt that this piece of trash had gone crazy. He actually dared to provoke young Master Feng Luo. Young Master Feng Luo was a direct descendant of the Feng clan. He was also the younger brother of the powerhouse Feng Yun. Even if he killed Long Yu, it would only end in nothing. Long Yu, this piece of trash, actually wanted to die. Could it be that he had been humiliated to the point that his brain had broken? What did you say? Feng Luo's smug expression turned cold in an instant. He was indeed nothing in the Feng clan. Feng Yao, who was the same age as him, was already in the 7th realm of the martial path and had become an inner disciple of the Ice sect. As for him, he was still unable to break through the bottleneck and step into the 4th realm of the martial path. Thus, he did not even have the qualifications to enter the sect. This had always troubled him. But now, this piece of trash, Long Yu, actually dared to say that he wanted to step on him. This was simply preposterous. Trash, this is your own death wish. I'm going to cripple one of your legs and let you know how serious the consequences of speaking carelessly are. Feng Luo said gloomily. He took a step forward and the strength of the 3rd realm of the martial path gathered in his hands. The 3rd realm of the martial path had the strength of 4,000 kilograms. If it was the Long Yu from 3 days ago, he might not be his match. However, 3 days ago, after Long Yu absorbed the Spirit Jade Pill and stepped into the 2nd realm of the martial path, his strength had also reached 2,000 kilograms. With the activation of the Green Dragon Mark, he could have an additional 1,000 kilograms of strength. With the strength of 3,000 kilograms and the killing experience accumulated by Long Yu in his previous life, it was not difficult to deal with Feng Luo. Feng Luo could not even break through the bottleneck of the fourth realm of the martial path. Of course, he could not comprehend any profound martial arts technique. His combat ability was considered the weakest among the third realm martial practitioners. Die. Feng Luo's face was ferocious. His right fist gathered 4,000 kilograms of strength and emitted waves of netherworld aura. Like an Azura, he swung it towards Long Yu's chest. It's the Shura hand, a martial arts technique from the martial arts pavilion. Feng Luo has already comprehended it to the small success stage. Long Yu, that piece of trash, will not be able to escape this time. He was originally a piece of trash who could not cultivate. In the future, he will lose one of his legs and become a cripple. The Shura hand, when cultivated to the large success stage, can emit the aura of an Azura. It's a pity that Feng Luo's comprehension is still too poor. After so many years, he can only comprehend it to the small success stage. So what if it's at the small success stage? It's more than enough to deal with a piece of trash like Long Yu without using martial arts technique. Is he afraid of losing? The surrounding Feng family disciples were discussing and pointing at the scene. No one thought that Long Yu could escape from such an attack. In fact, Long Yu did not intend to escape. With a thought, the green dragon mark was instantly activated. A mysterious power filled his limbs and bones. 3,000 kilograms of strength. Not only in terms of strength, but in terms of combat techniques, Long Yu was a lot stronger than Feng Luo. Facing Feng Luo's punch, Long Yu's body moved quickly. With a sidestep, he slid past the edge of the punch and swept his leg forward. The 3,000 kilograms of strength swept Feng Luo's knee solidly. Feng Luo could not help but scream in pain. His whole body fell to the ground with a bang. Pah! With one foot on Feng Luo's back, Long Yu still had a faint smile on his face. So this kid is so weak. I thought he would be much stronger. The entire martial arts pavilion became quiet. With just one move, Long Yu had trampled Feng Luo under his foot. Everyone was dumbfounded. They could not believe the scene in front of their eyes. The trash Long Yu who could not cultivate had actually knocked down young Master Feng Luo with one kick? How is this possible? Isn't he trash? But how could that kick have the strength of 2,000 to 3,000 kilograms? Impossible, my eyes must be playing tricks on me. Many people even rubbed their eyes, but when they opened their eyes again, they saw the same scene. They could not help but be speechless. That trash Long Yu had really kicked Feng Luo down and then stepped on his back. Everyone's mind replayed the words that Long Yu had said to Feng Luo a moment ago. If one day, this trash, step on you, then what do you count as? Count as? Of course, he was more trash than trash. Feng Luo fell to the ground with Long Yu stepping on his back. He felt as if the entire sky was about to collapse. He had actually been defeated by a trash, and in one move at that. How is this possible? You're clearly just a trash. Feng Luo gritted his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. That's right, I'm trash, but you're even more trash than me. Long Yu said calmly. I think you just said that you wanted to cripple one of my legs? Since that's the case, I'll return the favor. Stop! A loud shout came from the side. The collateral elder, Feng Tianxiang, who had been sitting at the side, finally moved. This white-haired elder moved as fast as a gust of wind. His eyes flashed fiercely. The martial arts pavilion strictly prohibits violence. Those who use violence will die. Long Yu was calm and sneered. Are you blind? Feng Tianxiang ignored Feng Luo's attack just now. Now that Feng Luo was about to have one of his legs crippled, Feng Tianxiang came out and even used the excuse of the martial arts pavilion strictly prohibiting violence. What a joke! Although Feng Tianxiang's speed was very fast, there was still a distance between him and Long Yu. No matter how fast he was not as fast as Long Yu's movements. Long Yu raised his foot and stomped down heavily. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking came from Feng Luo's foot, causing the expressions of the surrounding people to change. You trash, you actually dared to make a move. Feng Tianxiang was furious. His eyes flashed fiercely, and his body moved like the wind. He was the one guarding the martial arts pavilion today, but Feng Luo had one of his legs crippled. This was a great humiliation to him, and it put him in a very bad situation. Feng Luo was the younger brother of the future head of the Feng family. Trash, since you're looking for death, you can't blame anyone. So what if you've stepped into the martial path? I'll cripple you right now and let you know that trash will forever be trash. Feng Tianxiang was incomparably furious. His hand condensed the Shura aura. It was the Shura hand that he had comprehended to great success. If this attack hit Long Yu, even if Long Yu did not die, he would be crippled. Are you done messing around? Just as Feng Tianxiang was about to reach Long Yu, a dull voice came from outside the door. In just a moment, a tall and straight figure was already in front of Long Yu. Chapter 9. Boom. After a loud bang, the two figures in the field quickly separated. Feng Chang'e stood firmly in front of Long Yu and did not take a single step back. He was as steady as a mountain. However, the branch family elder, Feng Tianxiang, was forced to take several steps back from the collision. His face immediately turned pale, and his aura became unstable. It was obvious that he had suffered a loss when fighting Feng Chang'e head-on. Feng Chang'e, you are the patriarch of the Feng clan. How dare you allow an outsider to fight in the martial skill pavilion? Feng Tianxiang glared at Feng Chang'e with a stern expression. Is that so? So in your eyes there is still me, the clan head of the Feng clan. If that's the case, then I'll have to use my authority as the patriarch, said Feng Chang'e lightly. Feng Luo had provoked him without reason in the martial skills pavilion and even attacked him ruthlessly. Now that he had one of his legs crippled, it was his punishment. As for Long Yu, he is innocent. Don't go too far. Feng Tianxiang almost spat out a mouthful of blood, and his eyes were practically spitting fire. You better figure out who exactly is doing such an outrageous thing. Feng Chang'e's eyes flashed fiercely. Since you don't know what's good for you, I'll have to be strict again. Feng Tianxiang, as the guard of the martial skill pavilion today, you actually allowed the Feng clan's disciples to use force here. According to the Feng clan's rules, you are stripped of your status as an elder. From now on, you no longer need to guard this martial skill pavilion. You. Feng Tianxiang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Feng Chang'e, what right do you have to strip me of my elder status? Because I am the head of the Feng clan, Feng Chang'e said decisively and unquestionably. At this moment, Feng Tianxiang's face turned ashen. This is bad. Not only would he be stripped of his position as an elder, but he would also lose his leg. In the future, he would probably have to face the blame of his brother and father. At this thought, Feng Tianxiang glared at Long Yu with hatred in his eyes. He felt that the reason he had fallen to such a state was all because of this trash. If not for this trash, how could he have fallen to such a state? However, he had never thought that his current situation was entirely his own doing. Are you alright? Feng Chang'e turned around and smiled warmly at Long Yu. I'm fine. Thank you for your concern, foster father. Long Yu shook his head. Since that's the case, you can choose any martial skill in this martial skill pavilion. Feng Chang'e smiled. There's no need, godfather. I want to go out and explore the world. Long Yu shook his head. Since he had already decided to leave the Feng clan, he would not touch the Feng clan's martial technique. Adventure? Feng Chang'e could not help but be stunned for a moment. Then, he smiled and said softly, Good. Now that you can defeat Feng Luo in one move, you have a little more assurance when you go out and explore. Your father has an old friend in the Zhentian clan. Why don't you visit the Gentian clan first? Gentian clan, all right. Long Yu's eyes lit up and he nodded. The Gentian clan had an old friend of his father. Who could it be? Of course, he didn't know. He would have to wait until he reached the Gentian clan. Since he had decided to leave, the sooner the better. Long Yu immediately left the martial skill pavilion with Feng Chang'e and went back to pack up. Long Yu left the martial skill pavilion with Feng Chang'e. News of the martial skill pavilion quickly spread throughout the Feng clan. The trash Long Yu was no longer trash. Not only did he not cripple him, but he also crippled one of Feng Luo's legs. How cruel! Then, news spread that Long Yu was heading to the Ice Sect to join one of the 7 major sects of the Tang Empire. That trash wants to join a sect? What wishful thinking! That's right. He only defeated that idiot Feng Luo. He thinks he's so talented. What a joke. You can't say that. The family head's daughter is already an inner disciple in the Ice Sect. Maybe that trash Long Yu can get in through his connections? Haha. In the Feng clan, a group of people was discussing. However, they did not know that the news they received was actually fake. Long Yu was heading to the Gentian clan, not the Ice Sect. The Ice Sect was to the north of Jade Gate City, and the Gentian clan was to the south of Jade Gate City. One in the south, the other in the north. The two places were separated by tens of thousands of miles. The reason for this was that Long Yu knew that some people would not let the matter rest after he crippled Feng Luo's leg. In the 2 days he was preparing to leave, Feng Luo's father, who was also Feng Chang'e's elder brother, Feng Changtian, had argued with Feng Chang'e several times over this matter. Once Long Yu left, the other party would most likely chase after him. Now that the news was fake, even if the other party wanted to attack, they would not be able to find traces of Long Yu. 3 days later, at night, Long Yu prepared a horse and brought the travel expenses that Feng Chang'e had prepared for him. He quietly left Jade Gate City and headed south. The Gentian clan was tens of thousands of miles away. Even if he rode a horse, it would take a few days to reach the Gentian clan. This jade pill was prepared for me by foster father with all his might. It is a middle-grade pill. However, my body has not finished absorbing the medicinal power of the spirit jade pill. I'll put it aside for now. When Long Yu left, he looked back and saw that Jade Gate City was bathed in moonlight. In this city, there was only one person who truly cared about him, and that was Feng Chang'e. Don't worry, foster father. I'll definitely increase my cultivation as soon as possible. I'll be back to help you at the clan meeting in 3 months. Long Yu made up his mind and sped forward. With Long Yu's departure, the Feng clan of Jade Gate City immediately made a move. Many experts secretly set off towards the north. However, after several days of chasing, they still did not see Long Yu's shadow. These people naturally knew that they had been tricked. Little Yu, the Feng clan is not peaceful now. If you can gain a foothold in the Gentian clan, it will be much better than staying in the Feng clan. In the Feng clan, Feng Chang'e climbed to the top of his mansion and gazed into the distance. After a long time, he finally sighed. The current Feng clan was in a precarious situation. The clan meeting in 3 months would probably be the day when the clan leader would be replaced. For the next 3 days, Long Yu rode his horse to his heart's content, galloping in the direction of the Gentian clan. Recently, he had slowly absorbed the medicinal power of the spirit jade pill that had accumulated in his body. Finally, when he was about to reach the Gentian clan, he broke through in one fell swoop and reached the 3rd level of the martial path. At the 3rd level of the martial path, he had 4,000 Jin of strength. In addition, Long Yu activated the Azure Dragon Mark to increase his strength by another 1,000 Jin. He was even stronger than an ordinary person at the 3rd level of the martial path. After stepping into the 3rd level of the martial path, the Azure Dragon Mark seemed to have undergone some sort of change. However, Long Yu still could not see what had changed, so he could only give up. Early in the morning, Long Yu finally saw a stretch of lofty mountain range in the distance. He knew that this was the heaven-suppressing mountain range where the Gentian clan was located. The Gentian clan is the same as Feng Yao's ice sect, one of the 7 great sects of the Great Tang Empire. Long Yu urged his horse forward. Looking at the mountain range, he recalled the records he had read in the Feng clan. The 9 levels of the martial path are not the final realm of the martial path. Above the 9 levels of the martial path, there are even stronger realms of the martial path. However, such existences can only be found in sects like the Gentian clan. We're almost there, Haya. Half an hour later, Long Yu stopped his horse not far away from the mountain range. In front of him was a canyon, the heaven-suppressing canyon. This was the only way to enter the Gentian clan. If foreign cultivators wanted to join the Gentian clan, they only needed to pass through the heaven-suppressing canyon to pass the test. However, the heaven-suppressing canyon was not that easy to pass through. At the entrance of the heaven-suppressing canyon, a group of hundreds of cultivators from various places were resting and discussing countermeasures. These cultivators were all young cultivators who wanted to join the Gentian clan. According to the rules, these young cultivators must not be older than 18 years old. Long Yu happened to be 18 years old. If he passed another year, the sect would no longer accept him. That punch from the fatty's servant was just right. The one riding the horse over there, get over here! Suddenly, an arrogant female voice rang out, causing Long Yu to frown. He turned his head in the direction of the female voice and saw a haughty young lady in a red dress walking towards him, surrounded by a group of servants. "I'm talking to you. What are you still looking at?" Seeing Long Yu frown, the haughty girl's eyes flashed with a trace of impatience. "Since you're a rider, you should know how to take care of a horse. I'm going to the heaven-suppressing canyon, so take good care of my Snow White. If there's even the slightest mistake, I'll hold you responsible." As the girl spoke, she pointed to a white horse beside her that was foaming at the mouth. That should be the Snow White she was talking about. After the young girl finished speaking, she looked at Long Yu condescendingly, as if it was Long Yu's great honor to have him take care of her horse. Seeing the commotion, many people began to whisper among themselves. "That's Tan Yu. I didn't expect her to be here today. Looks like another person will be able to ascend the heaven-suppressing canyon today." "Tan Yu? Who's that? She seems unruly. Does she have some background?" "Shoo, lower your voice. You'll be in trouble if she hears you. She's from one of the 4 major clans in the Jade Gate City, the Tan clan. It's said that the Tan clan's patriarch is an expert in the 9th stage of the martial path. No one in the entire Jade Gate City can compete with him. Not only that, but Tan Yu also has an elder brother in the Gentian clan. He was already an inner disciple of the Gentian clan a long time ago. Now, he's definitely ranked in the top 3 of the inner disciples. His future will be limitless." Listening to the discussions of the people around her, the young girl proudly puffed out her chest and a complacent look appeared in her eyes, as if she was the most noble peacock princess in the world. However, in Long Yu's eyes, this girl was just an idiot. Who did this girl think she was? She actually caught a random rider at the entrance of the heaven-suppressing canyon and ordered him around like a servant, asking him to take care of her horse that was foaming at the mouth? Based on his previous experience, Long Yu knew that there was a word to describe such a girl: princess syndrome. Ignoring the arrogant Tan Yu, Long Yu turned around and headed straight for the heaven-suppressing canyon. The path of the martial path was not one to fear danger. Since he wanted to join the Gentian clan, he could just go straight to the heaven-suppressing canyon. Why waste time outside? As for taking care of Tan Yu's foaming horse, that was even more impossible. Seeing Long Yu's actions, everyone was dumbfounded. This black-clothed kid actually dared to ignore Tan Yu's words? He must be tired of living. As expected, Tan Yu's face immediately turned cold when she saw Long Yu turn around and leave. Chapter 10. Tan Yu's prideful face darkened. Long Yu turned around and left, not putting her in his eyes at all. How could a spoiled brat like her endure such humiliation? Bring him back, I want to slap his face, Tan Yu coldly said to the guards behind her. These guards were all bodyguards she brought from her home. Young miss, he has already entered the Heaven Suppression Canyon. I'm afraid it's not convenient for us to make a move, an older cultivator said with a troubled expression. If it was outside the canyon, no one would care, but since Long Yu had already entered the canyon, they would undoubtedly offend the Jintian clan if they made a move. Even the largest Tan clan in Jade Pass City did not dare to offend the Jintian clan. As one of the 7 major sects of the Great Tang Empire, the Jintian clan's foundation was unimaginable. A mere Tan clan could be destroyed with a wave of their hand. A bunch of trash. Tan Yu snorted and walked towards the canyon. From today onwards, I will be a disciple of the Jintian clan. As for that reckless brat, when he comes out of the canyon, break his arms and legs for me. Yes, young Mississippi, the guards answered one after another. Looking at Tan Yu's figure disappearing into the canyon, they all felt a chill down their spine. They knew their young Miss's temperament the best. That black-robed brat had offended their young Mississippi. Whether he could become a disciple of the Jintian clan or not, his fate would be miserable. Long Yu stepped into the canyon, his mind completely focused on passing through it. He couldn't be bothered with Tan Yu's princess syndrome. Raising his head, Long Yu saw that the Heaven Suppression Canyon was a long and narrow valley with steep cliffs on both sides. In the middle of the cliffs, there was a long flight of stairs that led to the entrance of the Jintian clan. This was a long flight of stairs with a total of 300 steps. It was said that when one walked on this flight of stairs, there would be a heavy pressure descending from the heavens, preventing one from continuing forward. Without sufficient strength and comprehension, it was impossible to walk all 300 steps. As long as one passed these 300 steps, they would be able to join the Jintian clan and become an outer disciple. Let's test the situation first. Long Yu thought to himself as he walked towards the 300 stone step. When he stepped on the first stone step, a heavy pressure descended from the sky. If an ordinary person who had never cultivated stepped on this stone step, they would have been crushed into pieces. Long Yu was now at the 3rd stage of the martial path. His own strength was 4,000 kilograms, so it wasn't a problem for him to withstand the pressure. He faced the pressure and stepped forward. With every step he took, the pressure that descended from the sky would become stronger. Fortunately, it was a gradual increase, allowing Long Yu to take 100 steps in one go and arrive at the 100th step. At this point, the pressure on Long Yu was enormous. Wave after wave of heavy pressure surged from both sides of the mountain walls, making Long Yu feel as if he was walking under a waterfall. Every step forward was extremely difficult. He gritted his teeth, enduring the pressure that enveloped his body, but his back was still straight. His body was covered in sweat and his legs seemed to be bending under the pressure. The pressure here is too much for me to bear. It's impossible to walk 300 steps with just the strength of the 3rd stage of the martial path. He raised his head and saw that there was still 2/3 of the way to the end. Sure enough, it was rumored that the 7 great sects of the Great Tang Empire were very strict in recruiting disciples. If one couldn't reach the 4th stage of the martial path before the age of 18, they basically didn't have the qualifications to join them. However, Long Yu wasn't willing to give up. It wasn't easy to get here, but he still hadn't used his full strength. How could he back down now? The Jintian clan's recruitment of disciples can't just look at one's current cultivation. It must also include a cultivator's talent. Since that's the case, there must be another way. Long Yu gritted his teeth as he thought about it. At this moment, he discovered that on both sides of the mountain walls of the Heaven Suppression Canyon, the sharp edges of the boulders seemed to be arranged in a special combination. The special combination of these boulders seemed to contain spiritual energy, exuding a mysterious aura that made Long Yu's heart skip a beat. Gradually, under the pressure that he couldn't bear, he entered a rather strange state. In his eyes, the edges of the boulders seemed to be one with the surroundings, as if they were expressing something to him. Long Yu actually comprehended something from observing the mountain walls on both sides. At this moment, the proud girl Tan Yu also entered the canyon. When she saw Long Yu's figure on the 100 steps, she couldn't help but smile disdainfully. "And here I thought you had some ability, so it turns out that you're just a trash in the 3rd stage of the martial path." Tan Yu raised her head arrogantly and began to walk up the stone steps. Her figure under her red dress was graceful and exquisite. Her brother, Tan Jian, had long been an inner disciple of the Zhentian clan. He had once told her that the 300 steps required one to be at least in the 4th stage of the martial path. If a person in the 3rd stage of the martial path came, they would only be able to walk up to 100 steps at most. Seeing that Long Yu had stopped at the 100 steps, she guessed that he was only in the 3rd stage of the martial path. As the precious granddaughter of the Tan family's head, she had naturally reached the 4th stage of the martial path. She was confident that she could walk up the 300 steps and pass through the canyon. Compared to the 3rd stage of the martial path, the 4th stage of the martial path was a watershed. There was also a bottleneck. If a cultivator couldn't break through this bottleneck, then no matter how long they cultivated, it would be impossible to reach the 4th stage of the martial path. Just like Feng Luo, who had one of his legs crippled by Long Yu. However, if one broke through the bottleneck, then one would be able to cultivate qi and inner strength in the body. Not only would one's attack and defense be greatly improved, but one would also have the terrifying strength of 4,000 pounds. Tan Yu's footsteps were light and quick. She quickly arrived at the 100th step where Long Yu was at. She glanced at him with disdain. "Trash, you dare to come here and embarrass yourself with only the 3rd stage of the martial path? You really don't know what's good for you." Tan Yu mocked him with disdain. "Since you've embarrassed me just now, there's no need to keep your trash cultivation. However, I'm too lazy to do anything. When you leave the canyon, my followers will naturally let you understand what it means to be superior." Originally, after saying that, she had hoped to see some panic and fear on Long Yu's face. However, reality had disappointed her. Now, Long Yu was in a mysterious state. He closed his eyes to comprehend, as if he didn't hear her at all. Just like outside the canyon, Tan Yu was once again ignored. "Good, you're good." Tan Yu's face darkened. She glared at Long Yu, who had his eyes closed, and continued to move forward. In the Heaven Suppression Canyon, she didn't dare to make a move on Long Yu. However, she believed that when this brat failed to join the Zhentian clan and left the Heaven Suppression Canyon, it would be his death. Long Yu's first time ignoring her made Tan Yu decide to cripple his cultivation. Long Yu's second time ignoring her made Tan Yu decide to take his life. As the person involved, Long Yu knew nothing about it. He was still immersed in that mysterious state of mind. Not long after, Tan Yu continued to move forward. She condensed twice the strength of Long Yu and finally reached the 300th step. According to the rules, she was now an outer disciple of the Zhentian clan. 2 disciples guarding the mountain immediately came to welcome her. They were also outer disciples of the Zhentian clan, and they were ordered to arrange the new disciples to pass through the Heaven Suppression Canyon. "Junior sister Tan Yu, congratulations on becoming an outer disciple of the Zhentian clan." A skinny man with small eyes said flatteringly, "My name is Wu Qing, and I'm in charge of arranging junior sister Tan Yu's entry. Senior brother Tan Jian told me to wait here for a long time." Wu Qing. Tan Yu looked at the skinny man, Wu Qing, and nodded in satisfaction. Wu Qing's flattering expression obviously made her feel very comfortable, making her feel like a high and mighty princess. "I'm Han Jian. Greetings, junior sister Tan Yu." The other person had a square face, but when he looked at Tan Yu, there was also a hint of passion in his eyes. Tan Yu's identity was outstanding, and she was beautiful. He was attracted to her at first glance. If he could gain her favor, he would have more authority in front of senior brother Tanjian in the future, right? Very good. What's your cultivation? Tanyu nodded arrogantly and asked in a commanding tone. I'm in the 4th stage of the martial path, and senior brother Han is in the 5th stage. Wu Qing immediately replied in a flattering manner. 4th and 5th stage, not bad. Tanyu nodded as a fierce light flashed in her eyes. Follow me and wait here for a while. There's a piece of trash 100 steps down. I want to see how he rolls down. Oh? There's actually someone here who dares to offend junior sister Tanyu? When he comes up, I, Wu Qing, will teach him a lesson. I'll let him know that he can't afford to offend just anyone. Wu Qing's eyes lit up. He was just thinking of a way to please Tanyu, but someone came knocking on his door. This was exactly what he wanted. You're overestimating him. That trash is only in the 3rd stage of the martial path. How can he come up? Tanyu snorted with disdain. So he's only in the 3rd stage of the martial path. Then, I'll accompany junior sister to watch a good show. Han Jian, who was standing by the side, smiled. I heard that the pressure of the Heaven Suppression Canyon will often kill those who don't know their limit. Those who try to barge in without sufficient strength will only end up with their bones crushed. Tan Yu's eyes lit up. If that's the case, why don't we use words to provoke that trash and force him to barge in? Wouldn't it be interesting to watch him die under the pressure? The 3 of them quickly arrived at the vicinity of the 300 stone step. Looking down, they saw the black-robed Long Yu still standing at the 100 stone step. He's indeed a piece of trash in the 3rd stage of the martial path, Wu Qing said with disdain. Although his cultivation was only 1 stage higher than the 3rd stage of the martial path, the difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. Right at this moment, Long Yu, who was immersed in a profound state, finally opened his eyes and raised his head. This is the feeling, as though I'm one with the surroundings. Chapter 11. At the top of the Sky Suppression Canyon, there was a peak that pierced through the clouds. At the top of this peak, there was a quiet and elegant pavilion. At this moment, there were 2 old men in black and white robes sitting opposite each other in the pavilion. They were separated by a chessboard, and each of them held a piece in their hands as they played against each other. Suddenly, the 2 elders seemed to have sensed something below, and a smear of astonishment appeared on their faces. Old Black, you felt it too? The white-robed old man had a benevolent look on his face as he spoke gently. Intent. The black-robed old man was a man of few words as he lightly spat out 2 words. To be able to comprehend intent at such a young age, even if it's just a trace, it's still commendable, the white-robed old man said with a smile. The 2 old men continued to play chess as if they didn't care about what was happening in the canyon below. In fact, their attention was focused on the young man who had comprehended a trace of intent in the canyon. That young man was Long Yu. When Long Yu opened his eyes, he felt that the pressure from the canyon seemed to have merged with him, instantly reducing the pressure. It should be fine now. Long Yu's eyes flashed with confidence. With his current strength, he could definitely reach the entrance of the Zhentian clan with the strength of the 3rd stage of the martial path. Not only that, but the trace of intent that he had comprehended would also be of great help to his future cultivation. Feeling the azure dragon mark on his chest heating up, Long Yu knew that the azure dragon mark was the reason why he could comprehend this trace of intent. He didn't expect that the azure dragon mark would be of such great help to him. Step by step, his footsteps became lighter and lighter. This was because the wisp of concept he had comprehended was continuously strengthening as he moved forward. On the 300 steps, Tan Yu, Wu Qing, and Han Jian stood together, looking down at Long Yu with disdain. How many steps do you think they'll reach? Tan Yu asked with great interest as if she was playing a fun game. In my opinion, with his strength of the 3rd stage of the martial path, he'll reach the 150th step at most. That's his limit, Wu Qing said with certainty. His tone was filled with disdain. But as soon as he said this, he saw Long Yu take a light step forward, and in an instant, he passed the 150th step. Wu Qing's expression instantly turned ugly. Wasn't this a ruthless slap to his face? Only 200 steps? Han Jian's tone was firm, but he didn't care too much. A martial cultivator of the third rank of the martial path was 2 ranks lower than him. Compared to him, he was simply too weak. But just as he finished saying these words, Long Yu continued to step on the stone steps below him, easily crossing the 200 stone steps. At this time, Tan Yu and the other 2 finally realized that something was wrong. Did he make a breakthrough? Tan Yu was slightly surprised. Who can break through in such a situation? This brat must have found a way to cheat. If he really can come up, I will let him know that the Zhentian clan is not a place for cheaters to join. A dark expression flashed across Wu Qing's face. Tan Yu nodded her head in satisfaction. It seemed like Wu Qing was pretty smart. After all, if he didn't find a reason, they wouldn't be able to make a move on that trash. With them around, even if that trash managed to break through to the 4th rank of the martial path, he wouldn't be able to join the Zhentian clan. Very quickly, Long Yu stepped on the 250th step and continued to climb. 280 steps, 290 steps, 300 steps. Long Yu took a heavy step forward, landing on the 300th step, after which, he felt the heavy pressure on his body disappear. He had successfully passed the heaven-suppressing canyon, and according to the rules, he could become an outer sect disciple of the heaven-suppressing sect. Not only that, but Long Yu also had a great harvest this time. He had comprehended a certain intent on the walls of the canyon. After comprehending the state, Long Yu felt that he was even more compatible with this world. Even the power that he could display with a casual punch was slightly greater than before. However, before he had time to familiarize himself with the concept that he had just comprehended, 3 figures walked towards him. It's Tan Yu. Knitting his brows, Long Yu raised his head and saw Tan Yu and 2 other Zhentian clan youths walking towards him with ill intentions. Looking at the 2 youths, it was obvious that they were extremely respectful towards Tan Yu. It was impossible for them to be here to congratulate him for passing the Heaven Suppression Canyon. One of them had small eyes and a skinny figure like a monkey. He jumped towards Long Yu. It was Wu Qing. Wu Qing sneered. A trash like you wants to join the Zhentian clan? The reason why he called Wu Qing trash was to provoke Long Yu. If Long Yu flew into a rage, he would be able to teach Long Yu a lesson and chase him away. Most importantly, he would be able to show off in front of Tan Yu. Trash. Long Yu's expression remained the same as he glanced at Wu Qing. That's right. Although you've passed the Heaven Suppression Canyon, it doesn't mean that you're qualified to join the Zhentian clan. Wu Qing said with disdain, my current cultivation is in the 4th stage of the martial path. If you can't even defeat me, then you'd better scram. Don't embarrass yourself here. Hearing that, Long Yu raised his brow. Is it up to you to decide whether or not I can join the Zhentian clan? What did you say? Wu Qing was instantly enraged. How dare this brat disrespect him and call him a brat? His cultivation was indeed at the bottom of the heaven-suppressing sect, but no matter what, he still cultivated the heaven-suppressing sect's martial skills. What qualifications did this brat, who had just stepped into the heaven-suppressing canyon, have to look down on him? I'm saying that you're not qualified to decide whether or not I can join the Zhentian clan, right? Long Yu took a step forward, not fearing Wu Qing at all. Although Wu Qing was a disciple of the Zhentian clan and probably cultivated the martial techniques of the Zhentian clan, Long Yu wasn't afraid of the other party. He had a smile on his face, but it was filled with killing intent. Long Yu had long since gotten used to it. He would always be able to observe his surroundings at all times. He had long since seen through the movements of the 3 people in front of him. Tan Yu and Wu Qing should be in the 4th stage of the martial path, and the last one should be in the 5th stage of the martial path. Now that Wu Qing wanted to show off, Long Yu didn't mind teaching him a lesson. Right now, Long Yu was in the 3rd stage of the martial path, so he had the strength of 2,500 kilograms. If he activated the Azure Dragon imprint, he would have the strength of 2,500 kilograms, not to mention that he had just comprehended a trace of intent, so he might be able to fight Wu Qing with his strength of 4,000 kilograms. Furthermore, Long Yu had experienced countless life and death battles in his previous life. Whether it was his mentality or the details, he would definitely have a better grasp than Wu Qing. Trash, you're courting death. Wu Qing's small eyes were filled with anger. Today, I will teach you a lesson and let you know the consequences of behaving atrociously in the Zhentian clan. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Qing couldn't wait to move. As he took a step forward, he condensed his Xian Qi inner strength. The Xian Qi in his body surged, and his 2 fists were quickly covered with a layer of powerful Xian Qi inner strength. Only after reaching the 4th stage of the martial path could a martial cultivator condense Xian Qi inner strength. Not only would one's offensive ability be greatly enhanced, even their defensive ability would be greatly enhanced. The 4th stage of the martial path was the watershed of the early stage of martial cultivation. Wu Qing's face was filled with contempt. With a single step, his entire body swept over like a gust of wind. Accompanied by Xian Qi inner strength, his fist appeared in front of Long Yu. So fast, Long Yu's heart skipped a beat. His strong combat intuition made him quickly retreat. At the same time, he lowered his head and with great difficulty, he managed to dodge Wu Qing's punch. Trash, weren't you very awe-inspiring just now? Why are you running so fast now? Wu Qing's voice was full of sarcasm. This is our Zhentian clan's martial skill, Flickering Wind Step. Next, I will use my full strength. Let's see how you can dodge. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Qing's footsteps moved quickly. In the next moment, his thin figure once again appeared in front of Long Yu. His fist, which was condensed with inner strength, was impressively in front of him. It looked like he was about to punch Long Yu away. If this punch hit Long Yu, with Long Yu's current cultivation, he would be crippled even if he didn't die. However, at this moment, Wu Qing suddenly felt a powerful force emanating from the target in front of him, causing the circulation of Xian Qi in his body to stagnate. Wu Qing was instantly shocked. What kind of strange power was this? How could this trash in front of him have such a powerful aura? Flickering Wind Step, your speed is indeed very fast. But in the face of absolute power, what's the use of just speed? Long Yu's calm voice sounded, and then he took a step forward, accompanied by a powerful concept that enveloped Wu Qing's thin body. The concept that he had just comprehended in the canyon, when used by Long Yu, actually produced a miraculous effect, suppressing a 4th-level martial Dao cultivator like Wu Qing. Immediately after, Long Yu activated the Azure Dragon mark, condensing his entire body's strength of 5,000 pounds, and with a punch and a kick, he attacked Wu Qing from extremely tricky angles. Although Wu Qing's movements were somewhat slow due to the power of the concept, he still had the strength of a 4th-level martial Dao cultivator. Facing Long Yu's attack, Wu Qing quickly reacted. He condensed his Xian Qi and inner strength into a punch, instantly repelling Long Yu's punch. At the same time, the sound of fist bones shattering rang out. With just one punch, Long Yu lost to Wu Qing in terms of strength, and his fist bones shattered. However, this was nothing to Long Yu. His trump card was still to come. Immediately after, the fist's tricky kick landed on Wu Qing's waist. The tyrannical force sent Wu Qing flying more than 10 meters away. He fell heavily on the ground and rolled twice on the ground, his body covered in mud. This kick caused Wu Qing to suffer heavy injuries. He could no longer get up and fell to the ground, wailing. Wu Qing. Han Jian, who originally wanted to watch the show from the side, couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect Long Yu to be so strong, directly sending Wu Qing flying with a kick. What a waste! Tan Yu, who was wearing a red dress, had a gloomy expression as she cursed. She originally thought that Wu Qing would be able to teach the arrogant black-clothed brat a lesson, but she didn't expect to be taught a lesson instead, causing her to lose face. Now, do I have the qualifications to join the Gentian clan? Long Yu endured the pain of his fist bones shattering as he calmly swept a glance at Tan Yu and Han Jian. Dream on! Han Jian, go teach him a lesson and make him regret offending me. Chapter 12. Hearing Tan Yu's words, Han Jian revealed a smile. Wu Qing was eager to show off but ended up failing miserably. Now that he, Han Jian, was here, it was time for him to show off his might and handsomeness. Junior sister Tan Yu, don't worry. Anyone who dares to offend junior sister Tan, you will be taught a bloody lesson. Han Jian looked at Long Yu with disdain and took a step forward. He could tell that even though Long Yu had defeated Wu Qing, his bones were broken. No matter how heaven-defying Long Yu was, it was impossible for him to fight against a fifth-stage martial path cultivator. He had to win this battle, and by then, he would be able to get closer to Tan Yu, or even, but just as Han Jian was daydreaming, an old voice came from the sky and rang clearly in everyone's ears. What are you waiting for? Stop! How dare you act so presumptuously in the Sky Suppression Canyon? Anyone who can pass the Sky Suppression Canyon before the age of 18 will become a disciple of the Gentian clan. This is the rule that cannot be violated. The ancient voice was warm yet stern, causing Han Jian, who was just about to make a move, to break out in a cold sweat, his expression flickering. It's the sect elder. Han Jian had long been a disciple of the Gentian clan, so he had naturally heard of the rumors that there were two sect elders guarding the Sky Suppression Canyon. However, rumors were just rumors. No one had actually seen them in person. Now, in order to curry favor with Tan Yu, he had broken the rules of the sect and engaged in a private duel, and the elders of the sect had spoken out to stop him. Elder, disciple Han Jian knows his mistake. Please punish me. Without a second thought, Han Jian immediately knelt down and lowered his head respectfully. The punishment for breaking the sect's rules was extremely severe. Right now, Han Jian only wanted the sect elder to lighten his punishment. What was the point of pleasing Tan Yu? She was only the younger sister of an inner disciple, after all. Compared to the sect elder, the difference was like heaven and earth. Forget about the punishment. Bring the two new disciples into the sect and settle them down. The old voice continued, as though it did not care about what had just happened. Han Jian was slightly taken aback, but he quickly recovered and kowtowed twice. Thank you, elder. Disciple Han Jian will get it done right away. Tan Yu wasn't any better than Han Jian. She might be arrogant and domineering, but she wouldn't dare to go against the Gentian clan elder. On the other hand, Long Yu glanced at the clouds on both sides of the canyon with a faint smile. This elder definitely knew that someone was looking for trouble with me, yet he only spoke up now. Clearly, he wants to see how my strength is, or perhaps, how my comprehension of that concept is. Now that they're not punishing Han Jian and Tan Yu, I'm afraid they're trying to create trouble for me in the sect to urge me to cultivate. What a good scheme! Although Long Yu had seen through the elder's intentions, no matter what, the elder's voice had helped him solve a problem. After all, he was not Han Jian's match right now. Junior sister Tan Yu, come with me. I will arrange for you to go to the residence of the outer sect disciples. Han Jian smiled at Tan Yu respectfully and glanced at Long Yu before turning to leave. Junior sister Tan Yu, come with me. I will arrange for you to go to the residence of the outer sect disciples. Due to the appearance of the elder, Tan Yu did not dare to stay any longer. She hurriedly left with Han Jian. However, when her gaze swept past Long Yu, a vicious glint appeared in her eyes. Obviously, as long as she had the chance, she would absolutely not let Long Yu off easily. Long Yu glanced at her indifferently. On the surface, he didn't show anything, but he secretly kept his guard up. Once he entered the sect, he had to quickly absorb the middle-grade elixirs and jade pills that Feng Chang'e had prepared. It would be best if he could step into the fourth stage of the martial path. That way, he would be able to condense celestial qi and inner force. Both his offensive and defensive abilities would be greatly enhanced, and his safety in the Zhentian clan would be slightly better. Han Jian led the two of them along the mountain path in the canyon and soon arrived at the residence of the outer sect disciples of the Zhentian clan. Junior sister Tan Yu, this is your residence. Senior brother Tan Jian has already arranged it. Han Jian led Tan Yu to an elegant courtyard and spoke in a fawning manner. It's all right. Tan Yu glanced at the courtyard and saw that there was a garden, a rockery, and a pavilion. She was quite satisfied with it. Then, junior sister Tan Yu, please wait for a moment. I will take him to make the arrangement. Han Jian pointed at Long Yu. Go. Tan Yu turned around and looked at Long Yu with disdain before walking into the elegant courtyard. What are you waiting for? Han Jian didn't forget to scold Long Yu as he turned to leave. However, the elder's voice was still echoing in his mind, so he didn't dare to say the word trash. Long Yu followed. Along the way, he noticed that the outer sect disciples of the Zhentian clan had their own courtyard. The environment was even better than his residence in the Feng clan, as expected of a sect. However, Long Yu soon noticed that Han Jian was actually leading him to an extremely remote corner. Not long after, they arrived in front of a somewhat dilapidated courtyard. You will live here. Someone will bring you the outer sect disciple uniform and Zhentian clan disciple identity token. Han Jian said coldly before turning around and leaving. Clearly, he couldn't stand the environment of the courtyard. Long Yu looked around and casually took a few steps. He found a large cesspool not far behind the dilapidated courtyard, emitting a terrible stench. This treatment, how can it be so unfair? Long Yu's expression turned cold. The place he lived in was actually such a vile environment. It was obvious that Han Jian was abusing his position to take revenge and go back to curry favor with Tan Yu. I'll remember this debt for the time being. Long Yu thought in his heart as he turned around and stepped into the courtyard. Right now, the most important thing was not to find Han Jian to reason with, but to absorb the jade pill and try to break through his current realm. Otherwise, even if he went to find Han Jian, he would only be humiliated for nothing. When Long Yu broke through, it would be the day he would find Han Jian to settle the score. Jade pill, a mid-grade pill. It's even more precious than the spirit jade pill I took last time. In the courtyard, Long Yu roughly cleaned up the room, then sat cross-legged on the haystack and took out the pill that Feng Chang'e had prepared for him. This was a crystal-clear pill that exuded a mouth-watering medicinal fragrance. It was priceless. Last time, the low-grade spirit jade pill was equivalent to half a year of bitter cultivation for an ordinary person. However, after Long Yu took it, he relied on the Azure Dragon mark to directly break through to the second stage of the martial Dao. Then, it helped him step into the third stage of the martial Dao. Now, this mid-grade jade pill was equivalent to a year of bitter cultivation for an ordinary person. To Long Yu, the absorption effect was clearly stronger. I hope I can break through to the fourth stage of the martial Dao in one go. Chapter 13. As soon as the Yuyao pill entered his stomach, a burst of spiritual energy immediately spread to Long Yu's limbs and bones. Absorb. Long Yu's heart beat, gradually transforming the spiritual energy of heaven and earth contained in the Yuyao pill into profound energy, storing it in the meridians of his body. Originally, the strength he possessed was 4,000 jin of the third stage of the martial Dao. However, now, under the effect of the Yuyao pill, his strength began to slowly increase. 4,100 jin, 4,200 Jin. Unknowingly, the azure dragon mark on Long Yu's chest began to heat up, storing the medicinal power that he could not absorb. Seeing this, Long Yu's heart calmed down and began to speed up the absorption of the medicinal power. Not long after, 30% of the Yuyao pill's spiritual energy was transformed into profound energy in his body, flowing through the meridians of his body. The profound energy in his meridians grew rapidly. However, because he had not broken through to the next realm, his strength could not exceed 5,000 Jin. Only after breaking through to the fourth stage of the martial Tao could his strength instantly increase to the standard of 8,000 Jin. He opened his eyes and found that it was already late outside the house. He stopped cultivating for a while. Since the remaining medicinal power was stored in the azure dragon mark, he had to go out and see if his things had arrived. Feng Chang'e had told him that in a sect like the Zhentian clan, if he wanted to enter the martial skill pavilion to choose a martial skill, he needed a disciple identity token as proof. As for the outer disciple robes, Long Yu did not care much about them. However, the disciple identity token was a very important thing. When he opened the door, he saw something on the ground at the entrance of the courtyard. It was obvious that someone had sent it over while he was cultivating. Upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a set of blue robes. It must be the outer disciple robes. However, this set of blue robes was casually thrown on the ground. It was full of mud and footprints. It was obvious that it had been trampled on countless times. Beside the dirty blue robes was a plate of leftovers. Could this be the dinner for Long Yu? Where's the identity token? Long Yu thought to himself as he flipped open the dirty blue shirt. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not find the identity token of the Zhentian clan outer disciple. Obviously, the courier had sent over the outer court disciple attire and leftovers, yet only his identity command token was withheld. Obviously, he was making things difficult for Long Yu. Very good, a few more debts have been added to this account. A cold glint flashed in Long Yu's eyes as he cast his gaze towards a place not far away from the courtyard. There was a forest there. Tonight's dinner should be settled. As for the rest, it wouldn't be too late to think about it when he stepped into the fourth stage of the martial path. As night fell, Long Yu finished eating the roasted rabbit he caught in the forest and continued to cultivate. In the azure dragon mark, the medicinal power of the Yuyao pill stored began to take effect, turning into profound qi that continued to be absorbed by Long Yu, and the strength of his whole body continued to increase. The effect of the azure dragon mark is really heaven-defying, Long Yu thought to himself. In the middle of the night, his meridians were overflowing with profound qi, and his strength had reached the limit of the third stage of the martial path, 5,000 pounds. Next, he was just short of breaking through to the next realm. In the Heavenly Mandate continent, anyone who wanted to step into the fourth stage of the martial path would have a bottleneck, and that was to condense qi inner strength. For example, the Feng Luo that Long Yu had taught a lesson to at the Feng family could not break through to the fourth stage of the martial path because he could not condense qi inner strength. However, this did not seem to be a problem for Long Yu. Break through! The veins on Long Yu's forehead bulged, and the profound qi in his whole body surged and was quickly absorbed by his meridians. Then, it seeped into every part of his body. It was as if he had been reborn, and the strength of his whole body instantly increased by 3,000 pounds. 8,000 pounds. The fourth stage of the martial path. Long Yu only relied on his own talent to be on par with a genius like Feng Yao. Feng Yao could step into the seventh stage of the martial path at the age of 16. If Long Yu's meridians were not blocked, he would naturally be able to do the same. The bottleneck of the fourth stage of the martial path was almost non-existent in front of Long Yu. Long Yu opened his eyes and stood up. He had finally reached the fourth stage of the martial path, and he could hold the strength of 8,000 pounds. This feeling of becoming stronger made him feel excited from the bottom of his heart. In this world, only by mastering power could one stand. And now, Long Yu was gradually walking the path of the strong, step by step. When the sun rises tomorrow, I will go and ask for the identity token, Long Yu thought to himself. At this moment, he suddenly felt a dry heat in his chest, as if something was happening to the Azure Dragon mark. That's right, when I broke through to the second and third stage of the martial path, the Azure Dragon mark seemed to have changed a little. At that time, I couldn't tell what had changed. Now that I've broken through to the fourth stage of the martial path, the feeling is even stronger. Thinking of this, he hurriedly tore open the front of his chest, but the scene he saw stunned him. This is... On his chest, where the mark of the Azure Dragon used to be, the coiling Azure Dragon had changed drastically. Previously, the Azure Dragon mark was a little blurry and did not match his body. But now, the Azure Dragon had become incomparably clear, as if it was innate to him. Furthermore, the color of the Azure Dragon had also changed. Its originally azure body had now become somewhat serene. There were traces of black lines on it, mysterious and profound. The heat that Long Yu felt just now came from these black-veined patterns, which made him feel surprised. Nine Nether Dragon, a term inexplicably flashed through Long Yu's mind, making him suddenly understand that the mark on his chest was not an Azure Dragon, but a dragon from the 9 Nether realms. In this way, the Azure Dragon mark might not be called the Azure Dragon mark, but the 9 Nether Dragon mark. Activate. Long Yu didn't think too much about it and hurriedly activated the 9 Nether Dragon mark. He discovered that the traces of black lines suddenly glowed with a black light. At the same time, an extremely terrifying force poured into his body from the black lines. It's actually the strength of 10,000 Jin? Long Yu was instantly shocked. After he activated the 9 Nether Dragon mark, just the power that came from the black lines had reached a terrifying level of 10,000 Jin. It was even stronger than his own 8,000 Jin strength. In other words, if the current Long Yu activated the 9 Nether Dragon mark, he would have a total of 18,000 Jin of strength. It was even stronger than the 16,000 Jin of strength possessed by the 5th level of the martial Tao. In the Heavenly Mandate continent, 1,000 Jin of strength was known as the strength of a fierce horse because the most ordinary fierce horse in the Heavenly Mandate continent had about 1,000 Jin of strength when running at full speed. Therefore, after Long Yu activated the mark, it could be said that he had the strength of 18 fierce horses. He was on a completely different level from an ordinary 4th level martial Tao cultivator. In the Heavenly Mandate continent there were 9 levels of martial arts. With every increase in cultivation, the strength one possessed would double. Therefore, in the Heavenly Mandate continent, there were very few people who could challenge above their level. However, this did not seem to be a big problem for the current Long Yu. After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, Long Yu felt his limbs begin to ache. Although activating the 9 Nether Dragon mark gave him great strength, the side effects were not small. In the end, my body is not strong enough. With a cultivation of the 4th level of the martial Tao, it will definitely be very difficult to contain the power of the 5th level of the martial Tao. It will even cause damage to my body over time. Long Yu immediately stopped activating the 9 Nether Dragon mark and lay down on the grass bed to rest. Right now, his limbs were sore. The side effects of activating the 9 Nether Dragon mark were great, but he should be able to recover after a night of rest. Early the next morning, Long Yu went out to gather information. With his rich experience, it did not take long for him to understand some of the situation from the other Gentian clan outer court disciples. The Gentian clan outer court disciple robes and identity tokens were all managed by the outer court disciples. As for the outer court managing disciples, they were chosen from the outer court disciples and would be replaced once a month. This month's outer court disciple was called Feng Yang. Feng Yang, he's actually from the Feng clan of Jade Gate City. It seems that he is also part of the reason why my outer court disciple identity token was withheld. A cold light flashed in Long Yu's eyes. Unknowingly, he had already arrived at the residence that was previously arranged for Tan Yu. This residence had elegant pavilions, gardens and rockery. No matter how you looked at it, it was 1,000 times better than the courtyard that was arranged for Long Yu. The sound of footsteps came from the front. Long Yu raised his head and saw Tan Yu wearing a red dress. She proudly puffed out her chest and walked towards her residence like a princess. Behind her was the square-faced, upright and plain-spoken Han Jian. Han Jian glanced at Long Yu and said loudly to Tan Yu, "Junior sister Tan Yu, it seems that our luck is pretty good. We've just returned from the martial skill pavilion, and we've already met an old friend." Long Yu's identity token had not yet been issued, but Tan Yu's token had already been in her hands. It seemed that Han Jian had brought Tan Yu to the Gentian clan's martial skill pavilion, and it seemed that she had gained quite a lot. Tan Yu stopped in her tracks and looked at Long Yu with contempt. "I've asked around. This trash is called Long Yu and he lives in the Feng clan of Jade Gate City. He's been a trash that can't cultivate since he was young. I didn't expect the Gentian clan to accept such a trash as a disciple." Tan Yu and Han Jian's words were blunt and immediately attracted the gazes of the surrounding outer court disciples. Originally, Tan Yu had already attracted the attention of many people because of her beauty and arrogant temperament. But now, seeing that Tan Yu was actually targeting an inconspicuous new disciple, everyone stopped what they were doing and stopped to watch. At the same time, they also pointed at Long Yu. "Who is this guy? A trash from Jade Gate City can actually enter our Gentian clan? I don't know who he is, but since he has offended junior sister Tan Yu, this trash will not have a good ending. Let's just wait and watch the show." Do you dare to guess what junior sister Tan Yu will do to this kid? What else can she do? Of course she will shatter his dantian and turn him into a real trash. The surrounding crowd roared with laughter and looked at Long Yu as if they were watching a joke. But they did not know that Long Yu was looking at Tan Yu and Han Jian indifferently as if he was watching a joke. Chapter 14. Tan Yu's prideful face lit up when she saw the crowd of outer disciples surrounding her. She cast a disdainful glance at Long Yu and said, "Trash, you should have known that offending me would not end well for you. Do you regret it now?" Long Yu stood calmly and glanced back at Tan Yu. "Do I need to regret it? You keep calling me trash, why don't you come and see if I, a piece of trash, can beat you up?" His words caused an uproar among the crowd. Tan Yu's face was filled with viciousness. "You said it yourself." Tan Yu's face was stern as she took a step towards Long Yu. It seemed like she was about to attack. Han Jian stood behind her and did not make any moves. Obviously, he believed that with Tan Yu's strength, defeating Long Yu would not be a problem. As he watched, he wore a mocking expression and said, "Junior sister Tan Yu, senior brother Tan Jian gave you a combat weapon just now. Why don't you use it now and see how powerful it is?" Tan Yu snorted and said, "I don't need a combat weapon to deal with this trash." The two of them spoke one after another, causing many people to exclaim in surprise. Combat weapon, it was a combat weapon. For a martial cultivator, if one's cultivation level was the foundation, then martial skills and combat weapons were the two indispensable factors in increasing one's combat strength. Martial skills could be cultivated once one stepped onto the path of martial arts and condensed celestial qi in one's body. The higher the level of a martial skill, the more powerful it would be in a battle. Combat weapons were forged by blacksmiths and could be used to enhance the power of a martial cultivator's celestial qi. A combat weapon could be a weapon, a defensive tool, or even a special combat tool. Similarly, the higher the grade of a combat weapon, the more power a martial cultivator could display. In the Gentian clan, only those who were promoted to the inner disciple rank would be rewarded with a combat weapon. Apart from that, only a few people could own a combat weapon. At this moment, Long Yu's expression was slightly solemn. Of course, he had already heard of the battle weapon. When Feng Yao returned to the Feng clan, she took away Feng Changa's sword, which was a combat weapon that could greatly enhance a martial cultivator's combat strength. In the entire Feng clan, there were less than 10 combat weapons. This showed how rare combat weapons were. However, a battle weapon is still an external object. The strength of a martial cultivator is the foundation. Even if this Tan Yu has a battle weapon, I won't necessarily lose to her. Long Yu thought in his heart as he calmly looked at Tan Yu walking towards him. He noticed that Tan Yu's footwork was mysterious and contained some kind of rhythm. She actually executed some kind of footwork martial technique. Tan Yu had only been in the Zhentian clan for a day, so it was impossible for her to comprehend the martial techniques of the Zhentian clan. Therefore, this movement technique was definitely a martial technique of the Tan clan of the Jade Pass City. Previously, when I was at the Feng clan, I heard that the Tan clan of the Jade Pass City has 3 great martial technique inheritances. One of them is the footwork martial technique, disorienting steps, which is a middle-grade martial technique. When the Tan family members use it, their speed is extremely fast. Long Yu was on full alert. Although Tan Yu was at the 4th stage of the martial Dao like him, she had cultivated the Tan family's martial arts technique. Her combat strength was definitely not to be underestimated. Tan Yu saw the cautious look on Long Yu's face and sneered in disdain. Following that, her footsteps became light and her slender figure in a red dress appeared beside Long Yu in the blink of an eye. Space-shattering palm. Tan Yu let out a fierce shout, and the wind from her palm was swift and fierce. Her palm smashed towards Long Yu's shoulder. Space-shattering palm was one of the 3 great martial techniques of the Tan clan. It was also a middle-grade martial technique with peerless power. This palm strike actually carried a force of 10,000 jin, far exceeding the 4,000 jin that Tan Yu should have as a 4th-stage martial path cultivator. It was clear that a middle-grade martial technique could raise the combat strength of a martial cultivator. Facing Tan Yu's extremely fast palm strike, although Long Yu was prepared, he did not expect her to be so fast. Fortunately, he had rich combat experience and immediately reacted. Inner strength, condense. He quickly condensed the profound qi in his body on his shoulder as he prepared to take Tan Yu's palm strike head-on. At the same time, the trace of intent that he had comprehended in the Heaven Suppression Canyon was quietly released by him. When Tan Yu's palm strike landed on his shoulder, the trace of intent also enveloped Tan Yu. Bang! Although Long Yu's shoulder was struck by Tan Yu's palm strike, due to the condensation of profound qi, his injury was not serious. His bones did not shatter like when he fought with Wu Qing. Tan Yu wanted to retreat when her attack did not work. The Tan family's martial techniques were light and agile, so she naturally would not clash head-on with Long Yu. But when she executed the shadow step again, she found that her body was enveloped by the heavy pressure of heaven and earth, just like when she was in the Heaven Suppression Canyon, causing her speed to drop by half a beat. This was a rare opportunity for Long Yu. He roared and threw out a punch that barely grazed Tan Yu's cheek. The force of 4,000 jin brought along a gust of wind, leaving a rough bloody mark on her delicate cheek. Deng deng deng. Tan Yu hurriedly retreated, and when she regained her balance, she raised her head and glared at Long Yu viciously. How dare you injure me? You attacked me first, and each of your moves was ruthless. Can't I protect myself? Long Yu said indifferently. Also, didn't you say that I'm trash? Why are you retreating now? Could it be that you're admitting that you're even more trash than me? As soon as his words fell, the surrounding crowd could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Just now, the clash between Long Yu and Tan Yu was as fast as lightning, and as outer disciples, they could not even react in time. All they saw was Tan Yu retreating with a bloody mark on her face. Clearly, in the clash just now, Tan Yu was at a disadvantage. Now that she was provoked by Long Yu's words, Tan Yu seemed to be at a disadvantage. Coldness and killing intent appeared on Tan Yu's face, and she stared coldly at Long Yu. "You're lucky, but I won't give you any more chances." As soon as her words fell, a 7-inch dagger appeared in Tan Yu's palm. The blade shone with a silver light, reflecting her sinister expression. She actually took out a combat weapon. "Didn't you say that you don't need a combat weapon to deal with trash like me?" Long Yu sneered. "Are you afraid?" Tan Yu snorted coldly. She held the 7-inch dagger in her hand tightly and said proudly, "If you have a combat weapon, you can use it. But how can a trash like you have a combat weapon?" She relied on her brother, Tan Jian, who had long become an inner disciple, to obtain a combat weapon. "Since you dare to hurt me today, I'll shatter your dantian and let you know the consequences of being disrespectful to me." As soon as her voice fell, Tan Yu's footwork continued to change. Her figure in the red dress circled around Long Yu, and one after another, the figure in the red dress appeared. It was obvious how fast Tan Yu's speed was. "I didn't cultivate any martial arts skills, so I'm too passive," Long Yu thought to himself. His eyes were as sharp as a goshawk's as he observed his surroundings, ready to react at any time. Die! With a flash of silver light, a dagger suddenly appeared in front of Long Yu's eyes. In the blink of an eye, it was right in front of him. Intent suppress. Long Yu released his intent at the first moment, and the speed of the dagger slowed down. Then, Long Yu swung his fist to the side and heavily punched the back of the dagger. Only someone with extremely rich combat experience could throw such an accurate punch in that instant. The punch, which carried a force of 8,000 jin, immediately caused the dagger to fly in another direction. However, the sharp chi condensed on the dagger battle weapon also caused Long Yu's fist to be injured once again. A layer of skin was peeled off. Long Yu didn't care about it. Taking advantage of the fact that Tan Yu's dagger was knocked to the side, and her body lost balance, he quickly attacked. Bang! With a single punch, Tan Yu fell heavily to the ground, and her wrist that was holding the dagger was heavily stepped on by Long Yu. "Trash, you've lost!" Stepping on Tan Yu's wrist, Long Yu's eyes flashed with killing intent, but he quickly retracted it. Now was not the time to kill Tan Yu. With Long Yu stepping on Tan Yu's wrist, Tan Yu's eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. This scene fell into the eyes of the surrounding outer disciples, causing them to open their mouths wide in shock. They almost couldn't believe their own eyes. Chapter 15. When Long Yu stepped on Tan Yu's wrist, the crowd was shocked, and Han Jian's expression changed. "Trash, let go of her!" Han Jian bellowed. His silhouette flickered as he sped towards Long Yu's location. Tan Yu had actually been defeated by Long Yu. This was something that Han Jian had never imagined. However, to him, this was an extremely good opportunity. Defeat Long Yu, please Tan Yu, and befriend the genius inner disciple, Tan Jian. The opportunity was right in front of him. Han Jian's figure flashed like a sword. "You want me to let go? I'm sorry, but I don't have my hand to let go." Long Yu saw Han Jian dashing towards him, and a cold glint flickered in his eyes. He placed his hands behind his back, and stepped on Tan Yu's wrist with one foot. Han Jian wanted him to let go, but he couldn't do it. He could only let go of his foot. If Long Yu couldn't defeat Han Jian, he could use Tan Yu to threaten him. But now, Long Yu didn't need to do that. "Get lost!" Long Yu raised his leg and kicked Tan Yu to the side, and prepared to face Han Jian. Tan Yu rolled a few times on the ground in her red dress, and her clothes were covered with sand and dirt. She even accidentally swallowed a lot of dust. Her originally soft long hair was now disheveled on her shoulders, making her look incomparably disheveled. Between the disheveled hair, her malicious eyes could be seen. "Senior brother Han Jian, kill him!" Tan Yu had never suffered such humiliation in her life, and the moment Long Yu stepped on her wrist, she already had the intention to kill. Today, this trash must die. Although the Zhentian clan forbade disciples from killing each other, the sect wouldn't be too harsh if someone accidentally killed someone during a spar. Tan Yu believed that with her brother Tan Jian's support, even if she killed Long Yu now, she would be fine. Han Jian's heart skipped a beat when he heard Tan Yu's voice, and he dashed towards Long Yu while holding onto the longsword on his back. His longsword was not a battle weapon, it was just an ordinary weapon used to complement his martial skills, and it did not have any amplification effect on his martial skills. However, Han Jian had been in the sect for a long time, and he had cultivated the Zhentian clan's sword technique. Furthermore, he was in the 5th stage of the martial path, so he was definitely stronger than Tan Yu. Long Yu kicked Tan Yu away and focused all his attention on dealing with Han Jian. When Han Jian attacked with his longsword, he once again released his intent domain, enveloping Han Jian's entire body. What kind of power is this? Just as Han Jian was about to finish off Long Yu with a single sword strike, he suddenly felt a heavy pressure descend from the heavens, acting on his body, causing his expression to change. Every time Long Yu released his intent, he would only use it on his opponent. Thus, even now, Han Jian still didn't know what methods Long Yu had. Now that the heavy pressure of the concept had descended, the unprepared Han Jian's speed was reduced. I don't care what kind of strange power you have, I'll take your life with a single sword strike. Han Jian withstood the heavy pressure of the concept and revealed a ferocious expression. He waved the longsword in his hand, bringing with it a sharp gust of wind. It condensed into a gale and swiftly attacked Long Yu. It's the Gale Sword art. It's an upper-grade sword technique of the sect. It's extremely powerful and fast. I didn't expect Han Jian to have already comprehended the Gale Sword art to the greater success stage. Even I can't withstand such a powerful tornado. That trash is out of luck this time. He bullied junior sister Tan Yu and completely angered Han Jian. When the crowd saw Han Jian's sword strike, they were incomparably shocked. It was obvious that it was extremely difficult to comprehend an upper-grade sword technique to the greater success stage. At the very least, it was rare among the outer sect disciples. Just when everyone wanted to see Long Yu being easily defeated, Long Yu calmly watched the tornado coming towards him. Logically speaking, martial cultivators can only release Xian Qi when they reach the 7th stage of the martial Dao. However, by relying on certain martial techniques, they can also achieve the same effect. Now, this Gale Sword art should be able to release Xian Qi and condense it into a tornado to attack the enemy, Long Yu thought in his heart. He knew that if he continued to fight with Han Jian, he would definitely lose, so he had to end the battle quickly. 9 Underworld Dragon Seal. With a thought, the 9 Underworld Dragon Seal on his chest was immediately activated. Under the black clothes that others couldn't see, the black lines on the 9 Underworld Dragon Seal condensed a huge force of 10,000 Jin, instantly flowing into Long Yu's limbs and bones. With the increase in strength, Long Yu's speed also increased a lot. Xian Qi Inner Strength Defense. If Long Yu wanted to end the battle quickly, he could only fight head-on with Han Jian. He condensed Xian Qi Inner Strength all over his body and punched towards the tornado. Boom! With a heavy sound, the tornado was actually blown apart by Long Yu's punch, dissipating in all directions. The violent tornado tore countless wounds on Long Yu's body, but he didn't care. Then, he leaped high and with a terrifying strength that surpassed the 5th stage of the martial Dao, he swept his leg towards Han Jian. Han Jian was suppressed by the power of the concept, and his speed slowed down. In his shock, he could only raise his arm and condense Xian Qi Inner Strength to block. Gotcha! Long Yu's foot fell, and with the power of 18 horses condensed into Xian Qi Inner Strength, he broke Han Jian's raised arm in one fell swoop. Risking his own injuries, Long Yu fought with Han Jian head-on. Unexpectedly, he defeated Han Jian even faster than he defeated Tan Yu, breaking his arm with a kick. Bang! Han Jian's body fell heavily to the ground, and with a clang, his long sword also fell to the ground. The pain of his arm being broken caused the veins on Han Jian's face to bulge, mixed with a look of disbelief. He didn't expect Long Yu to have such tyrannical strength. He had used Xian Qi inner strength to defend against that kick, but it still broke his arm. Obviously, Long Yu's kick contained a terrifying strength of 20,000 jin. How could this be the strength of a kid at the 4th stage of the martial Dao? Could it be that kick was some kind of super martial skill? The pain from his arm made Han Jian lose the will to fight. He had never suffered such a heavy injury in his life. Although Long Yu was covered in blood, and dozens of wounds were deep enough to see bone, his expression was indifferent, as if he didn't feel the slightest pain. After kicking Han Jian, Long Yu took a few steps back to prevent Han Jian from counterattacking. But he quickly realized that he had worried too much. Han Jian had lost the will to fight after his arm was broken. He was simply too weak. Go to hell! Right at this moment, a vicious and venomous shout came from behind Long Yu. It was Tan Yu. Although Tan Yu was defeated by Long Yu, she didn't suffer any injuries. Now that she saw Long Yu covered in blood from Han Jian's Gale Sword art, she actually thought of a sneak attack. The figure in the red dress and the silver dagger appeared behind Long Yu in an instant. Courting death. A cold light flashed in Long Yu's eyes. The 9 underworld dragon seal's amplification effect was still there. He used his tyrannical strength to move his feet, and his speed was more than twice as fast as usual, easily dodging Tan Yu's silver dagger. Then, he turned around and gave a heavy kick, which landed on Tan Yuehong's thigh. Ah! Tan Yu cried out in pain. Her whole body was kicked far away by the strength of 18 horses. This time, she, who was originally uninjured, was immediately seriously injured. Her leg bones were broken, and she couldn't even get up. Scatter! Long Yu only stopped the 9 underworld dragon seal after kicking Tan Yu away. His meridians were already aching, and if this continued, it was very likely that he would injure his body. Long Yu stood in place. The short battle had made his figure extraordinary in the eyes of the crowd. With the strength of a single person, he trampled on Tan Yu, who had a combat weapon, and defeated Han Jian, who was in the 5th stage of the martial path. Although he had also suffered heavy injuries, this made him even more terrifying in the eyes of the crowd. This guy is a madman. Many of the spectating Zhentian clan outer disciples thought so. If it were them, they would definitely not dare to face Han Jian's Gale Sword art head-on. Long Yu stealthily felt his entire body. There were over 20 large and small wounds all over his body, and the majority of them were caused by Han Jian's Gale Sword art. In addition, the bones in his left hand had been shattered yesterday, and had yet to recover. At this moment, no one knew how much pain Long Yu was enduring. However, this pain was nothing to him. He had suffered even more serious injuries, let alone flesh wounds. Take me to the outer sect director, Feng Yang. Long Yu adjusted his breathing, then casually picked a short man with a black face and said to him, Go, find Feng Yang? The dark-faced short man was startled. His eyes were filled with doubt and confusion. However, when he recalled that Long Yu did not use any martial skills during the battle, he couldn't help but have some guesses. Could it be that this kid's identity token was confiscated? This wasn't the first time something like this had happened. The dark-faced short man's cultivation was only in the 5th stage of the martial path. His strength was lower than Han Jian's, so he hurriedly turned around and left with Long Yu. After Long Yu left, the spectators finally dispersed. Among them, a shrewd light flashed in their eyes as they hurried towards the inner sect disciples' residence. Tan Yu had been seriously injured. This matter must be immediately reported to Tan Jian. At the same time, many people followed Long Yu. Long Yu's performance just now had shocked them. They couldn't help but want to see why Long Yu went to find Feng Yang and whether there would be a good show to watch. Chapter 16. Long Yu was well aware of Feng Yang's strength. With his current state of being heavily injured, It was practically impossible for him to defeat Feng Yang. After all, Feng Yang was stronger than Han Jian. When Long Yu was still in the Feng clan, he heard that he was about to advance to the 6th level of the martial path and become an inner disciple of the Zhentian clan. However, Long Yu still asked someone to bring him to Feng Yang because he had his own plans. "Junior brother, you're Long Yu, right?" The dark-skinned short man led the way while speaking. "I heard from Tan Yu that you came from Jade Pass City's Feng clan. This month's outer sect director, Feng Yang, is a member of the Feng clan. Do you have any conflicts with him? Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken away your identity token." Long Yu didn't answer. He didn't have the habit of revealing information to a stranger. The dark-faced short man didn't mind and said with a smile, "Listen to senior brother's advice. That Feng Yang's strength isn't bad and he will soon be promoted to an inner disciple. You've just entered the sect, so it's better to keep a low profile. Don't fight him head-on, otherwise you'll be the one suffering. Even if you go to him now, he won't give you his identity token. Instead, he will humiliate you. Also, you just bullied Tan Yu, her brother will definitely not let this go. Right now, Tan Jian is one of the top 3 inner disciples in the sect, and he is very powerful. You can't beat them. In my opinion, you should leave the heaven-suppressing sect now, so that you don't get humiliated for nothing, or even get into trouble." No matter what he said, Long Yu didn't say a word. The dark-faced short man felt bored and didn't say anything else. Soon, the two of them went up the mountain road and came to an elegant courtyard. The plaque at the entrance of the courtyard was printed with the words, "Outer Sect Director Pavilion." And behind the two of them, there were many people following closely, obviously coming to watch the show. Long Yu didn't care too much, because what he was about to do in a moment required some people to watch, and the more the better. "Junior brother Long Yu, the Outer Court Counselor Pavilion you're looking for is here. If your identity token has been detained, you can ask for it from the Outer Court Counselor. However, this has nothing to do with me." As the dark-faced shorty spoke, he flashed to the side with a mocking look on his face. Clearly, he was waiting to see Long Yu make a fool of himself. Long Yu glanced at the dark-faced shorty and did not say anything. He then stepped into the Outer Disciple Council Pavilion. "Feng Yang, come out!" Long Yu roared in a domineering tone. This roar caused the people behind him to jump in fright. Could it be that this Long Yu was courting death by acting so recklessly? "Who dares to be so rude?" An even more domineering voice came from the courtyard. Then, a tall young man walked out of the room. Looking at his appearance, he looked a little similar to Feng Luo. This person was Feng Yang. He had a strong body and an angry expression. He wore a blue outer court disciple uniform and had a jade token hanging from his waist. It was probably the identity token of the Outer Court Counselor. As soon as he walked out and saw Long Yu, Feng Yang's pupil shrank. He coldly snorted and said, "So, it's you, you piece of trash. Have you grown some guts? How dare you come to the Outer Court Counselor Pavilion and behave atrociously? What's more, you're in such a sorry state. You must have just been taught a lesson." When Feng Yang appeared, the people watching from the back all thought that there would be a good show to watch. Everyone knew that Feng Yang had a fiery temper. Now that Long Yu dared to call him by his name and ask him to come out, he would not let him off easily. Long Yu stared at Feng Yang's strong body and sneered disdainfully. "Feng Yang, you detained my identity token because you're afraid?" These words went straight to the point. When Feng Yang heard it, he immediately became angry. "What do I have to be afraid of? So you're saying that my identity token was indeed seized by you?" Long Yu took a step forward and sneered. When Feng Yang heard this, cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He was in a hurry to express that he was not afraid and forgot to deny the truth. What a blunder! One had to know that the Zhentian clan had chosen him as the Outer Court Counselor. Of course, the act of detaining an identity token was prohibited. If this matter was found out by the sect elders, he would definitely be punished. Even the cultivation resources would be reduced. I knew you were afraid. Long Yu did not hold on to this point. He only sneered. After all, once I get my identity token and go to the martial skill pavilion to practice martial skills, you, Feng Yang, will no longer be my opponent. So, do you agree or disagree? Bullsh *T. Feng Yang reacted and his eyes flashed fiercely. Who do you think you are? Even if you come to the Zhentian clan, you are still trash. Do you think I, Feng Yang, will not be your opponent? Then let's set a fight. Give me your identity token. Wait until I come back from the martial skill pavilion, then I will fight you. Feng Yang, do you dare or not? Long Yu stared at Feng Yang. His tone carried a hint of disdain. This trace of disdain made Feng Yang furious. This trash, Long Yu, had been trash in the Feng clan for more than 10 years. Now that he came to the Zhentian clan, he dared to be so arrogant. Feng Yang glanced at the many disciples outside the courtyard. He thought that if he did not agree to Long Yu's challenge, then wouldn't he lose all face and everyone would think that he, Feng Yang, was a trash? Therefore, even though Feng Yang knew that Long Yu's purpose was to extort an identity token, he still had to agree. Why wouldn't I dare? You asked for it. Take the identity token. Wait until you come out from the martial skill pavilion. I will let you know that a trash like you is no different from a dog in my eyes. Feng Yang coldly snorted, took out an outer disciple identity token from his bosom, and directly threw it to Long Yu. Long Yu caught the identity token with one hand. The corner of his mouth slightly curled up. Success. This scene made the dark-faced shorty who brought him here dumbfounded. He originally thought that Long Yu wanted to fight with Feng Yang. He didn't expect that with just a few words, Long Yu would obtain an identity token. Moreover, this Long Yu was so confident in challenging Feng Yang. Could it be that he didn't know that Feng Yang's strength was much stronger than Han Jian's? Just by entering the martial skill pavilion, Long Yu's strength wouldn't increase by much. After all, the Zhentian clan's martial skills weren't that easy to comprehend. If Long Yu wanted to rely on this to defeat Feng Yang, it could be said that it was simply wishful thinking. The dark-faced shorty's thoughts were also the thoughts of the surrounding disciples. However, Long Yu had trampled on Tan Yu, defeated Han Jian, and now arrogantly challenged Feng Yang. These outer disciples didn't dare to say anything about Long Yu. Wait. Just as Long Yu was about to leave, a girl's crisp voice, like an aureole, suddenly attracted everyone's attention. Then, a figure wearing a blue outer disciple uniform rushed out from the crowd. Long Yu looked and saw that it was a beautiful girl. However, her blue clothes were covered with mud and her cheeks were also covered with dust. It seemed that she was in a sorry state just like him. Who was this person? Almost everyone had this question in their minds. It's you? What are you doing here? Did you change your mind and want to ask me for help? When Feng Yang saw the girl appear, he couldn't help but squint at her and then ridiculed her. Bah, ask your head. The beautiful girl spat in disgust and then shouted, Since this junior brother has made a bet with you, I will also make a bet with you, how about it? Feng Yang heard this and said with a playful expression, You also want to do this? Let me tell you, there is no way. Then you don't have the guts? The beautiful girl said with contempt. So, you are really afraid that you will lose to this junior brother. The dignified outer disciple Feng Yang is actually so timid, laughable. When Feng Yang heard this, his face suddenly changed. Bullshit. Then what do you want to bet, tell me? I, Feng Yang, am not afraid of a little girl like you. Let's bet on the winner between you and this junior brother. The beautiful girl smiled and casually pointed at Long Yu. When this junior brother comes out of the martial skill pavilion to fight with you, if he loses, I am willing to beg you, but if you lose, not only will you have to give me the identity token, you will also have to give me the Qinghua pill you just obtained. How about it? You have a good plan, but this bet is so unfair. Feng Yang sneered. Not long ago, the sect rewarded him with a middle-level Qinghua pill. How could he use it as a child's play for a bet? Oh, it seems like you are really afraid of this junior brother, then forget it. The beautiful girl's face was full of obvious contempt and ridicule. She turned around and wanted to leave. Wait. Feng Yang's face alternated between green and purple. He looked around and saw that many people were pointing at him. He suddenly felt ashamed and coldly snorted. I agree to this bet, but don't regret it when the time comes. Hee, the one who won't regret it is you. I have a lot of confidence in this junior brother. The beautiful girl grinned at Long Yu. You really found the wrong person. Feng Yang glanced at Long Yu. His eyes were full of disdain. This brat is trash in the Feng clan, and he is still trash in the Jintian clan. You actually expect him to defeat me? Simply ridiculous. Is that so? It seems like I should tell you that this junior brother has just entered the sect 2 days ago, but he has already defeated Tan Yu and Han Jian. Now that he has entered the martial skills pavilion to learn, do you think you can still be his opponent? The beautiful girl's words made Feng Yang's face change. Defeated Tan Yu and Han Jian? How is this possible? That Long Yu is obviously trash. How can he defeat Tan Yu? Even if he can defeat Tan Yu with luck, he definitely can't be Han Jian's opponent. Feng Yang's face was gloomy. At this time, Long Yu had achieved his goal. Of course, he would not care about him, and directly turned around to leave. Seeing this, the dainty young girl hurriedly ran after them. Junior brother, wait for me. The beautiful girl quickly caught up with Long Yu and wanted to pat Long Yu's shoulder. Long Yu nimbly dodged and looked at the girl cautiously. Don't be nervous, I am on the same side as you now. You are Long Yu, right? My name is Liao Lele. I entered the sect 3 days earlier than you. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.